I'm playing Hatoful Boyfriend, a pigeon dating simulator where I am the only human girl attending an elite academy for birds. But these aren't your average avians. Every potential love interest has their own charming personality, hopes, dreams, fears, and of course, crippling trauma. To 100% the game, I'll need to get every ending for every character and unlock the true ending in Epilogue. While this may seem like your typical cliche dating sim just with birds instead of boys, it is definitely not. By the end, we'll be dealing with murder, government conspiracies, and literal world-ending catastrophes. On a more serious note, suicide is a major plot point in one of the romance routes as well as in the true ending, so please take care of yourself while watching. With that in mind, let's begin the insanity that is Hatoful Boyfriend. But first, hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Ali, and if you enjoy this video and you want to see more challenges like it, then please consider subscribing. With that, it was time to name our bird dating heroine, so I stuck with the default option, Hiyoko Tosaka. Hiyoko explained that she was a second year at St. Pigeonations, a highly respected school for gifted birds in all sorts of fields. The reason why Hiyoko, a human girl, was attending this school for birds was apparently a long story, but before she could explain, she was interrupted by her childhood best friend, Ryouta Kawara. If you've ever seen an anime, then he's basically just your standard best friend character. AKA, he's nice, but that's pretty much all there is to him. Hiyoko then offhandedly mentions that breakfast was hard to catch this morning because apparently she's a hunter-gatherer. But before I could even process that, the bell rang. Jeepers, no good being late on the first day, jeepers? Okay. I don't know if he's necessarily my type. I don't think I'm a jeepers girly. And with that, our first term of Hatoful Boyfriend began. Hiyoko and Ryouta headed to class where they met their homeroom teacher, Kazuaki Nageki, a famous math professor who tended to fall asleep at random times. He then handed the floor over to Sakuya Labelle Shiragane, a haughty transfer student. I have no wish to speak with commoners. Do not think I'm here because I wish to be. I love you and your stupid little weird-ass wing. Yeah, I don't know what that says about me and my type of men? Birds? But Sakuya was definitely the most interesting bird so far, so much so that I basically went ahead and committed to romancing him first. During lunch, Hiyoko went to the library and while there met a quiet, book-obsessed bird. He eventually introduced himself as Nageki Fujishiro, a freshman. He's a little too mopey for me personally, but I am curious to see what his deal is outside of being a shy nerd. On her way back to class, Hiyoko saw Sakuya arguing with another bird who was revealed to be his brother, Yuuya Sakazaki. Though based on how Sakuya called him a half-breed, they obviously aren't very close. Sakuya ran off and Hiyoko chatted with Yuuya a bit more. He ended up being a very flirty and suave ladies' man, which is admittedly a strange way to describe a pigeon, but I'm not wrong. He was definitely as arrogant and charming as Sakuya, if not even more so. Besides, you're the only human. A single puppy in a field of rye. Okay, Yuuya. Yuuya also revealed that Sakuya is genuinely an aristocrat, which explains his, everything. At the end of the school day, Hiyoko realized that Ryouta wasn't in class, and Kazuaki explained he went to the infirmary, likely due to his weak stomach. Hiyoko went to check on him, but the infirmary was completely empty. She started poking around at some drugs when a massive fucking bird appeared out of nowhere and offered to feed them to us. This is the doctor, Shuu Iwamine, who is, as we've seen, creepy as hell. Shuu told Hiyoko that Ryouta had already left, and Hiyoko, not wanting to stay in the creepy-ass infirmary, hightailed it out of there. Since Ryouta was already gone, Hiyoko decided to take a look at some of the club options, specifically the track team. When she got there, she saw a white bird freaking out about pudding, and for the first time since booting up the game, something was as confusing to me as it was to Hiyoko. This was Okosan, who was so bird that even the human visualization mechanism that allowed us to see the other birds as people doesn't work on him. He continued to crash out despite Hyoko's attempts to calm him down, even attacking her, before running off to train to achieve true pudding, whatever the hell that meant. A few days later, it was time for Hiyoko to join a club. Okosan, as we know, is on the track team. Sakuya is the student president, even though there was no vote and he was just handed the position when he enrolled, which, yeah, that sounds about right. And Ryouta is too busy taking care of his sick mother to be in a club. Since I was still committed to romancing Sakuya first, I of course decided to join him on the student council. The next day we had our first elective class, which meant we could study math, go to the gym, or practice music. Not sure why math is considered an elective in bird society, but since Sakuya is a pretentious asshole, raising our wisdom stat seemed to be like the best move. At the first student council meeting, Hiyoko realized that she and Sakuya were literally the entire council. Sakuya bitched at us for a while before making us choose our post. Since Sakuya was already the president, someone needed to keep his pompous ass in check, so Hiyoko declared herself the vice president. To my surprise, Sakuya seemed pleased by this, and happy to have Hiyoko as his right wing. A few days later, Hiyoko was just chilling at home, but her home is a cave. Like a totally open cave exposed to the elements. She did mention she was a hunter-gatherer earlier, but I didn't expect her to literally be on the Neanderthal grind. Did something happen to humans, forcing them to revert back to this lifestyle, or is Hiyoko just a freak? Anyway, back to silly bird dating stuff, it was time for a class hike. During the break, Hiyoko decided to talk to Sakuya, who was upset at having to do the very peasant core activity of walking. But after Hiyoko showed him a nice view, he quieted down. Upon seeing this, Hiyoko realized that he was just pretending to be angry about the hike for some reason. What a strange bird. Shortly afterward, it was time for Hiyoko to decide what she was going to do at the sports festival. And And by decide, I mean choose to do whatever Sakuya is doing, which was apparently cheerleading, or in his words, acting as general. Sakuya took his job incredibly seriously, to the point where he hired a full-size brass band with professional musicians to play at the sports festival. I assumed that the musicians would have to be human to even, like, pick up a brass instrument, but with how much of a novelty Hiyoko is, I'm not even sure if there are enough humans left in the world for there to be human musicians. Unfortunately, I feared I wouldn't be getting more information anytime soon. One day in the beginning of summer, Hiyoko left her classroom to see Yuuya and some others freaking out about Brian Pigeon winning his 7th Pulitzer. Brian was apparently the first intelligent pigeon and is a world-famous blogger. Yuuya seemed pretty obsessed with him for some reason. Are you in love with Brian Pigeon? Should I be worried about Brian Pigeon? I'm dating your brother. I don't need to worry about you right now. A few days after that, Hiyoko entered the classroom to see Ryouta cowering behind some overturned desks while Sakuya and Okosan fought. Sakuya apparently had some pretty rude things to say about Okosan and his pudding, and when Ryouta tried to break them up, he got wing attacked. Hiyoko stepped in, and even though I personally feel Sakuya is in the wrong for starting this, Hiyoko sided with him anyways to get some brownie points, and it definitely paid off. You are a credit to your simian ancestry, Tosaka. I respect your judgment. Oh my god, he respects my judgment, guys. Coo! I catch Okosan and throw him out the window? You do what? I mean, I know he's a bird, but Jesus Christ, Hiyoko. Okay, yeah, she probably didn't need to do all that, but it made Sakuya happy, so I guess that's all that matters. During a class break, Hiyoko decided to head to the store where she bumped into Yuuya. He flirted with Hiyoko a bit, and that may be so, but you know we doves reach sexual maturity within a year of birth. Why the fuck would you say that to me? I didn't want to know that. I don't want to know that. He kept going, and Hiyoko called him out on it, which he surprisingly genuinely appreciated. During Tanabata, which is a seasonal festival in Japan, Hiyoko headed to the plaza. She saw wishes from Sakuya, Yuuya, and Kazuaki, who I guess are the birds she's closest with this run. Her wish options were just about the most insane things I've ever seen, but I feel like Sakuya is a take the world by force guy, so that's what I chose. She bumped into Kazuaki, who offered to walk her home, but she declined and went to the arcade instead. A few days later, it was another elective day, and this time instead of going to math, I decided to mix things up and go to music. I was genuinely shocked to see that there were posters of human musicians on the wall, because we hadn't seen any other humans the entire game. Later, in swimming class, Sakuya and Yuuya fought over who was the faster swimmer. Hiyoko, of course, wanted to support her man, so she said Sakuya would be faster, but despite a close race, Yuuya ended up winning. Sakuya was unsurprisingly pissed, but Yuuya just seemed happy to get to spend time with him. What the hell is their deal? Why am I so invested in these bird brothers? On the last day before summer break, Sakuya demanded we help clean the student council room, and by help, he wanted Hiyoko to do literally everything. Hiyoko was not going to take that, so she demanded that he help out too. It looked like the brothers did have something in common, as Sakuya also seemed to respect us calling him out on his bullshit. However, due to his privileged life, he had never mopped before, which Hiyoko took great offense to. Talk about living in the lap of luxury. He's a fucking bird, Hiyoko! I don't even know how he's gonna mop in the first place. Well, on break, Hiyoko decided to work out to keep in shape for her apparently very literal hunter-gatherer lifestyle. She passed by a city street, a shrine, and this. What the fuck? What? No, go back to those buildings. Why were those buildings destroyed and falling? Hiyoko eventually stopped when she realized she was lost and bumped into a sparrow named Azami, who had a sick-ass bike. Hiyoko's spirit impressed Azami enough to drive her back home, but despite her biker vibes, Azami drove incredibly slowly in order to follow all of the traffic laws. Every time I think this game can't possibly be stranger, it goes out of its way to prove me wrong. A few days later, Hiyoko considered getting a summer job. Even though I'm sure Sakuya doesn't work, I kinda wanted to see what that was like, so Hiyoko headed to the cafe with the job opening. She talked to the owner, Ken Zaburo, and he hired her instantly on the spot. But when she went to her first day of work, Ryouta showed up and explained that he also wanted the job. Since Hiyoko didn't really need to work, she gave it to him with no hesitation. There are actually some endings that involve the cafe, so we will have to come back here eventually, but for now, it was just back to our cave. On the day of the summer festival, Hiyoko asked Sakuya to go with her. Sakuya had never been to one before, but he seemed to get into the spirit pretty quick. Where did you buy that candy apple, Sakuya? They had an interesting color, so I thought I would buy one. I'm not going to eat it. I shall take it home and mount it in a case. I love this freak. On the last day of August, Hiyoko woke up in a panic, thinking she had overslept on the first day of school, but in actuality, she was a day early. Kazuaki asked for help grading, but Hiyoko headed to the library instead, on the off chance Sakuya was there. Instead, she ran into Nageki, who was standing in the corner rather than sitting with the other birds. He said that they always ignored him, so Hiyoko asked if he was being bullied, and he didn't respond. I wish I knew what was going on. I feel kind of bad for the guy. The next day was the actual first day of our second term. Who is that? I want to date that bird. He's got a fancy little headdress. Hiyoko found a student ID in the hallway, and since she didn't know whose it was, brought it to Kazuaki in the staff room. Kazuaki surprisingly said that this student had been missing since June, which is, not great, but it's also not my problem this route. To distract myself from the horrors, on the next elective class, I sent Hiyoko to gym. Honestly, none of the classes are that interesting. They all just provide a bit of flavor text and sometimes a cameo from a character. So now that I've seen them all, I'm just going to go back to doing math the rest of the run to try to impress Sakuya. Speaking of Sakuya, the next time we were in class, he started complaining about how simple it was. Hiyoko was confused by this since Kazuaki is supposedly a famous math professor, but Sakuya aggressively rejected this. Apparently, Dr. Shuu is the only real famous person in the school due to his pathology work. I never knew the doctor was that famous. But then why is he working as a doctor for a high school? Even if it is a prestigious one. That is weird. I feel like he kidnapped the bird. I don't trust that man. He was scary. Next up on our list of Japanese high school cliches was the culture festival. Hyoko's class was doing a maid cafe, but since she had the day off, she decided to take Sakuya to the haunted house instead. I don't think he quite understood what was going on, but Hyoko thought he enjoyed it, so I'll take her word for it. A few days later, Hyoko realized she somehow handed in her recorder instead of her math homework. She rushed to the staff room to explain the mishap, but she found Kazuaki and Shuu arguing about some data that Kazuaki was supposed to analyze. Since Shuu scared the hell out of me, I obviously sided with Kazuaki. Hyoko quickly explained the situation and got the hell out of there. Later in music class, Hyoko found Sakuya staring at an instrument rack and asked what he was doing. Instead, he turned the question back on her and asked what she thought about the arts, but Hyoko didn't have a good answer for him. He seemed very quiet and not like himself, but he left before Hyoko could get more out of him. About a month later, Hyoko heard piano coming from the music room and was surprised to see that it was Sakuya playing. That was actually really cool, but it did mean I had guessed incorrectly about what classes he wanted me to do. Damn, I should have been doing music this whole time. I didn't even know. I should have known. He was the fucking cheerleader. Oh, I'm so stupid. I'm so bad at birds. Hyoko complimented him, but he just brushed it off his basic nobility skills. Right when she was about to leave, he randomly asked Hyoko what she loved. Hyoko, the idiot that she is, replied with udon, which, while I don't think that's what Sakuya was looking for, it still left him deep in thought. Hyoko received an invitation from Sakuya to attend his family's Christmas Eve party. On the night of the event, Hyoko was stunned by Sakuya's lovely house, and honestly, compared to the state of Hyoko's, so was I. They bantered for a bit before they were rudely interrupted by Okosan, who was here for some reason. Okosan and Sakuya yelled at each other a bit, but eventually Hyoko was able to break it up. She once again threw Okosan outside, which Sakuya greatly appreciated. On New Year's Day, Hyoko headed to the shrine. Ryouta was working there wearing the cutest little outfit, and Hyoko wanted to buy an amulet. Since now we knew more about Sakuya, she chose the one for fulfillment in art. She then headed over to get a fortune and ran into Kazuaki, who was lamenting his poor one. Hyoko ended up drawing a pretty good one, and her luck immediately manifested in the form of Sakuya, who rambled about noble duties and probably inaccurate historical facts. A few days later, the third term began. Hyoko was about to head home when she realized that Legumentine's is tomorrow. Legumentine's is like Valentine's Day, except that it's on February 3rd, and you give beans to the bird you like instead of chocolates. I decided to get Sakuya the bitter black bean since that seemed to be his vibe. Unfortunately, he didn't seem too impressed and actually refused to take them because they weren't good enough for him. I can't believe this asshole is still probably my favorite character. However, just a bit later, Hyoko saw Sakuya collapse outside in the cold. Sakuya, what's wrong? Don't ask for details, just carry me to your miserable abode, I beg of you. Oh, so you wouldn't take my beans, but now you want to be in my house. Alright, asshole. Hyoko offered to call his house, but he angrily refused, apparently having run away. Sakuya asked if she remembered the conversation in the music room where he asked her what she loved. Hyoko obviously did, and Sakuya revealed that he was jealous of how easily she was able to answer. Despite being a pure-blooded noble, Sakuya didn't really want to take his father's place. He loved music, but his father threw away his instruments and forbade him from playing. When Hyoko asked what he would truly want to do outside of the LaBelle family, he shyly answered that he'd want to see how far he could go as a musician, which was so cutely humble for him. With Hyoko's encouragement, he decided to tell his father that he wanted to pursue music, but he asked if Hyoko would stay with him should his father reject him. Hyoko, of course, agreed to follow him anywhere he needed to go. In the end, Hyoko had no idea how his father would react, but knew that Sakuya would come back to her, and that was all that mattered. With that, we unlocked our first ending and achievement. Sakuya actually has a true, more complete ending, which I assume we unlocked by studying music every elective day. However, I decided I wanted to take a break and do some other birdies routes before completely finishing his. But don't worry, the rest of the routes won't take nearly as long. Regardless of what bird you're trying to court, the game pretty much follows the same scenes and events with only minor deviations depending on what route you're doing. Until it doesn't. But we aren't there yet, so while we're still doing the normal routes, well, as normal as this game about dating birds can be, I'll just cover any notable differences or major new events throughout the routes. Anyway, since Ryouta was clearly meant to be the most basic route, I decided to do him next. The first choice you make in every playthrough is what club to join, but Ryouta isn't in a club. Since he said he got sick a lot, Hyoko chose to join the infirmary on the off chance she'd get to see him. In terms of electives, this route I just decided to do a mix of all three, since I figured Ryouta didn't have very high stat requirements, if any at all. When Hyoko went to her first day helping out at the infirmary, she ran into Yuuya, who works there. I was low-key tempted to switch and romance him, but since I was really interested in him, I wanted to power through some of the other routes first and save him for later. Yuuya ended up having to step out and asked Hyoko not to touch the doctor's desk, which seemed fair enough until Hyoko actually started cleaning. Some of these drugs are a little weird, no matter how you look at it. Is this really an infirmary? Feels more like a human, or rather avian experimentation room. A what? It feels like a what? Hyoko noticed some papers messed up at the desk and contemplated cleaning it, but I don't want to piss off the doctor until I absolutely have to, so she left it alone. On the day of the class hike, Hyoko ate lunch with Ryouta, and at the sports festival, Hyoko joined Ryouta for the three-legged race. Ryouta's a nice bird and all, but not gonna lie, he's pretty boring so far. One day, Hyoko headed to the cafeteria to see Ryouta trying and failing to calm Okosan down from a pudding tirade, but she stepped in and yelled at him until he left. A little while later, Ryouta randomly stopped us on the way to the infirmary to tell us some, Interesting information. Have you heard of the 7 mysteries of Saint Pigeon Nations, Hiyoko? No, the fuck I have not. Tell me. Yeah, well, there's one that says that sometimes students will disappear in the infirmary only to show up again as food in the dining hall and quill pens in the school store. I hope that's not the case, but I fear that it might be. Ryouta may claim that it's just a rumor, but with all the weird vibes Shuu's giving off, I definitely believe that that could be true, even though the implications of that are disgusting, to say the least. Unfortunately, Hiyoko is stupid and thought Ryouta was just being paranoid, so she headed to her shift in the infirmary anyways. But when she got there, she found Yuuya and Shuu in a tense conversation. Shuu accused Yuuya of touching his desk, but Yuuya lied and said he's been with Hiyoko this whole time, obviously hoping she'll back him up. I don't want Yuuya to fucking die, so I'm gonna say I was with him. Hopefully I don't die. Shuu didn't quite seem to believe him, but he didn't have enough evidence to actually do anything, so Yuuya was off the hook for now. Okay, I did not like that. I feel like Yuuya is going to fucking be served in the dining room, but okay. Once they got out, Hiyoko demanded an explanation from Yuuya, but all he said is that he couldn't tell us anything right now, and then just walked away. God, I wish I was dating him instead of stupid, boring Ryouta. On the last day of the semester, Hiyoko went to ask Shuu if she needed to clean the infirmary over the summer, which he turned down. He asked if there was anything else she wanted to talk about, and, that's all. Listen, we can worry about the missing students in a different route. We are having our happy fun pigeon dating sim time, okay? I want to date my normal friend Ryouta, who just happens to be a pigeon. I don't want to mess with you. I'll ask you to leave then. You are an unpleasant companion, but I have many experiments to conduct. I'm sure you do. I am sure you do. When it was time to choose if Hiyoko should do a part-time job, I decided to do exactly what I did last time. So she accepted the job and then gave it to Ryouta the next day. Hiyoko invited Ryouta to the summer festival, and it was just about as bland as you'd expect. Luckily, we got some spice a few days later when Hiyoko caught Yuuya digging around in the trash. He was pretty evasive about what he was looking for, though I'm pretty sure it has something to do with a not-so-good doctor. School started again, and Ryouta asked to walk Hiyoko home. They reminisced about how Hiyoko saved Ryota's life as a chick after he fell out of his mother's nest. Thinking about it, if I hadn't walked by then, you'd be dead. Jesus Christ, Hiyoko, that's an insane thing to say to your friend, but okay. As much as I've been shitting on Ryouta, he is a nice little guy. But at the school festival, I learned he had a completely different side to him. Oh my god, look at it. Oh, Ryouta. Oh, your stupid little drawn on. Oh, Ryouta. He asked Hiyoko to help him out at the maid cafe, and of course she agreed. And apparently, Ryota's pretty familiar with wearing a maid outfit, as Hiyoko soon discovered that one of his part-time jobs was at a cross-dressing cafe. Of course, I'm super supportive of Ryouta and his choices, so I'll just have Hiyoko say that she'll ask for him when she goes, and... No, I didn't even say that! No! No! Fuck, I'm so stupid! No! Oh no! And I didn't save! Oh no! Okay, I'm sorry, Ryouta. Okay, well hopefully I didn't just fuck everything up. Ryouta, wanna walk home together? No! I'm so fucked up, okay. Luckily, not all was lost, as Hiyoko ended up bumping into Ryouta later that night, but it was as he was coming out of the hospital. They headed over to the park to talk, and Ryouta told her that his mother was dying, and would never get better, and then just ran off into the night. God, I'm the worst. Not only have I been mean to you, but I accidentally had Hiyoko be mean to you. I'm so sorry, Ryouta. Despite it all, he invited Hiyoko out on Christmas Eve, and they had a chill evening together in the park, so maybe there was still a chance for something. It was once again New Year's Day, but while last playthrough it was bright and sunny, this time it was pouring down rain. That's not a good omen. I don't like that. Am I gonna die? Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you had a good vacations. I am so scared. It's amazing how on edge I feel playing this stupid pink pastel game about dating fucking pigeons. But to be honest, that probably says more about me being a baby about anything scary than it does about the game itself. For Legumentine's, Hiyoko bought Ryouta some calm corn, but I immediately started second guessing myself. I don't know, is corn even a bean? is corn even a legume? Thankfully, not only did he accept them, but apparently they were perfect for him since they were easy on birds' stomachs. That was of course totally planned because I am so thoughtful, and I definitely didn't just pick the most plain option for the most plain bird. Just a few days later, Ryouta abruptly invited Hiyoko out to the park to tell her that his mother had died. He cried about being alone, and when Hiyoko tried to reassure him that she was there for him, it didn't quite work. Ryouta pointed out that their lifespans were drastically different, and if they were to ever get together, he'd die much sooner than she would, and leave her feeling as alone as he feels right now. Which, wow, holy shit, that got deep all of a sudden. Hiyoko rejected this, and said that she wanted to be with him as long as she could, even if it was just for a little while. So they agreed to face the future together. I'm glad I was born, if only because I got to be with you. It's like a miracle. Thank you. Aww! That was actually really cute. We have to part with everyone eventually. If it comes a little early, then that's life. I don't care for how long it is. I'm happy enough just being with Ryouta. But live as long as you can, Ryouta. Live as long as you can so that you can carry wonderful memories with you when you return to the sky. Jesus, that was sweet. That was so sweet. Oh, that's so sad. Okay. Yeah, even though I think I still like Sakuya and Yuuya a bit more overall, Ryota's ending was fantastic, and it really made me appreciate him a lot more. I cannot believe that the stupid bird game genuinely almost made me tear up. I decided to do Kazuaki's route next, though I did feel a little weird having Hiyoko try to date her teacher. But honestly, with all that stuff Ryouta was saying about the human-bird age difference, there's a good chance that Hiyoko is actually many years older than him, so maybe it's not that weird? Okay, yeah, no, it's still weird, but listen, we have to do it to 100% the game, so we will. Once again, our attempted love interest wasn't in a club because he's, you know, the teacher. So I joined the library staff to see something different and get some hints towards Nageki's route, who I plan to do next. And of course, since Kazuaki was the math teacher, I picked math every time for my elective. While working at the library for the first time, Hiyoko was startled by Nageki. They had an awkward conversation, and then he left as suddenly as he arrived, so okay. Hiyoko took a nap with Kazuaki on the class hike, and then since he doesn't do anything at the sports festival, she chatted with Yuuya at the first aid tent, while Shuu ominously looked on. This time at Tanabata, when Kazuaki asked to walk Hiyoko home, she said yes, but I was a bit nervous. Please don't kill me, I would be very sad. Luckily, he just took us home. He was a bit emo about not having a place to go himself, but he left before Hiyoko could ask him about it. Later, while working at the library, Nageki asked Hiyoko what book she liked, and since I had no clue what the right answer was, I picked the first one. He didn't seem too impressed, though he did eventually admit he liked it too. Hiyoko invited Kazuaki to the summer festival, and it was pretty similar to the other routes until... I'm fine, don't worry, I'm just not very used to crowds. What the fuck? Are you- oh, okay. I thought he got shot! Oh, I'm so scared of this game. This time, when Hiyoko accidentally showed up to school a day early, she accepted Kazuaki's request of helping him grade exams, and they spent the day together. A few days later, Hiyoko commented that Kazuaki smelled like bleach, which is strange, but apparently he just fell asleep in the washing machine. If that's true, that's just really silly, but honestly, with how mysterious Kazuaki is, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a more sinister reason. At the school festival, Kazuaki asked Hiyoko to help with the reception area, and then promptly fell asleep. I feel like this route so far is just half Kazuaki asking Hiyoko for random favors, and half sleeping. Sometime later, Ryouta asked Hiyoko to bring Kazuaki his phone since he left it in the classroom. But before she could go look for him, a photo fell out of the case. The photo was of a bird, but it was completely scratched out, so Hiyoko couldn't tell who it was. When she found Kazuaki, she confessed that she had seen the photo, but he told us not to worry about it. Despite this, the vibe immediately shifted, and he left quickly afterwards, which totally wasn't ominous at all. A few days later, Hiyoko finished her cleaning duty and started to head home when... Where's my phone? Oh, I'm so getting murdered. Hiyoko eventually found it in the chemistry lab, but bumped into Shuu, who aggressively asked her if she saw anything. Hiyoko said that she didn't, but then he abruptly asked her to go get some files from the room next to them. I'm not sure I could get away with saying no. We're so dying. I'll just do as he says. Almost immediately after entering, Shuu locked her inside. The building would be locked soon, and no one knew where she went, so Hiyoko understandably started freaking out and pounding on the door. She heard footsteps approaching, but before she could try to hide, the door opened, and thank God it was Kazuaki. He let Hiyoko out and then scolded her for coming in here in the first place. She explained that it was the doctor who asked her to go in there, and out of nowhere, Shuu appeared and confirmed her story. Kazuaki sent Hiyoko home, but he stayed behind to speak with the doctor. That was a little sloppy. Oh no! Oh, he isn't on it. Or, at the very least, Kazuaki definitely knew that Shuu was up to some sketchy shit, which either way was the opposite of comforting. Everything progressed the same until Legumentine's. I bought Kazuaki coffee beans, thinking that they'd be good for helping him stay awake, but clearly that was in vain, as he fell asleep literally while Hiyoko was giving them to him. A few days later, Hiyoko invited Kazuaki out to officially confess her feelings. He responded that while he liked her a lot, he was unable to love another creature due to the bird in the photo he scratched out. Kazuaki and this bird were supposed to be together forever, but one day that bird was gone, and Kazuaki became depressed. Eventually, he couldn't tell if he was feeling love or hate for that bird, which is why he scratched out the picture. But Kazuaki also told Hiyoko that after their conversation about it, he burned the picture as a sort of apology for defacing it. He vowed to remember the face of the bird he knew, rather than a damaged photograph. In the end, he told Hiyoko that when she got older, he would be waiting here for her should she want to return to him. I like that pretty much more than any other ending they could have had. It's certainly a lot more mature than them just straight up getting together while Hiyoko was still in his class. Kazuaki definitely still has some hidden depths though, and I'm both curious and scared to find out what they are. Like I mentioned earlier, the next route I plan to do is Nageki's. Obviously, Hiyoko once again chose to be in the library staff, and since Nageki seemed like a smart guy, she also planned to study math every time. Hiyoko and Nageki once again chatted in the library when she first joined the staff, but they didn't get to say anything new to each other until the day of the sports festival when Hiyoko chose to go to the library. She thought she'd been alone until Nageki appeared out of nowhere and startled her. He explained that he didn't like to be outside and thus wasn't going to participate in the sports festival, so Hiyoko spent the day talking to him while he read. However, on the last day of the semester, Nageki once again asked her what book she liked to read. Since he didn't seem too impressed with our answer last time, she picked the second option. This was the wrong choice, as apparently it was a cheesy light novel and Nageki wasn't interested at all. But hopefully his route was as forgiving as Ryota's. During the summer, Hiyoko couldn't invite Nageki to the festival because she didn't have his number, but they did get to talk a bit while Hiyoko worked at the library over break. On the day before school started back up, she headed to the library and had the same conversation where she asked Nageki if he was being bullied. Once again though, he said nothing. At the school festival, Hiyoko used her day off to go chat with Nageki in the library. She brought him cookies, which he seemed to appreciate, but then he became upset when Hiyoko invited him to go to the haunted house. house. Hiyoko started to wonder if Nageki actually lived in the library since she had never seen him anywhere else. I, however, started to wonder if that was for a much darker reason. My suspicions grew when Hiyoko, while looking for her textbook, found Nageki locked in the library. Nageki apparently hadn't even noticed that the door was locked and didn't really seem concerned. Hiyoko invited him to walk home with her, which unsurprisingly he refused, but he seemed to imply that if he could, he would. A few weeks later, Hiyoko was studying alone in the library when Nageki shockingly sat down next to her and asked if they could talk. Nageki explained that while he wasn't being bullied, what was actually happening was even worse. But he enjoys speaking with Hiyoko because it helps him remember things. He was about to say more when they were interrupted by Kazuaki. Kazuaki reprimanded her about studying so hard by herself, but before she could correct him and say that she wasn't alone, Hiyoko noticed that Nageki had vanished. Did he leap out the window and go home ninja style? I don't think so, girl. I think he's dead. On Christmas Eve, Hiyoko studied in the library until late at night, but panicked when she saw it had started to snow, trapping her inside. Nageki appeared and they chatted about A Christmas Carol, which she apparently was rereading, and they seemed to have a nice time together. For Legumantines, Hiyoko bought Nageki some swollen hemp, whatever that is, but Nageki accepted it and that's all that mattered. A few days later, while working at the library, she found a note from Nageki asking her to stay until all of the other students had left. Once they were alone, Hiyoko asked what he wanted to discuss, and he abruptly asked if she wanted to go outside. Obviously, she said yes, but when Nageki tried to leave the library, he couldn't, like there was an invisible wall. He explained that every day he woke up here and at some point lost consciousness, and that the reason nobody talks to him is because they can't see him. Nageki had apparently been here for 5 years, but in that time, only Hiyoko had ever been able to see or talk to him. The reason that Nageki can never leave the library is because he took his own life there. Once he revealed that to Hiyoko, he began fading away, his hands of time finally stopping after getting to live vicariously through Hiyoko this year. Hiyoko begged him not to disappear and to keep talking with her, but after a heartfelt declaration of love, he vanished completely. Yeah, this route got heavy, to say the least. While Nageki still isn't my favorite character, and I feel like they could have handled the reveal of how he died a bit better, his story is undeniably tragic, and it hit me pretty deeply. Unfortunately, since I didn't know just how dark Nageki's story would be, our next route is going to be a very jarring vibe shift. So please feel free to take a moment, pause the video if you need to, go get a snack or a sip of water, catch your breath, whatever you need to do. And whenever you're ready, we will continue on with Okosan's route. Of course, since we know he loves to run, Hiyoko planned to join the track team and attend gym every elective day. On the day Hiyoko went to actually join the track team, she had a lively discussion with Okosan, who was apparently the team captain. He challenged her to an entrance test, and Hiyoko asked to face him in a long-distance race. Okosan respected this, and while he beat her by a mile, Hiyoko apparently showed enough potential to be accepted onto the team. On the class hike, Okosan crashed out about not finding pudding on his walk, and at the sports festival, he dominated the marathon race. A bit later, we once again had to break up the fight between Sakuya and Okosan, but this time, instead of throwing Okosan out the window, Hiyoko told Sakuya to apologize. This gave Okosan the strength to fully kick his ass. Hiyoko also sided with Okosan when he and Ryouta were fighting about cafeteria pudding. Okosan was appreciative of this, but said that fake pudding could not be forgiven, and somehow I think some of his weirdness rubbed off on Hiyoko. Son of the forest and me and Tatara village, our love pure, carry me away on Yakul. What? Who the heck is Yakul? That's how I feel, Ryouta. What the fuck is going on? One day while at the pool, Okosan challenged Hiyoko to a race, but he ran across the top of the water instead of swimming. Is he like pudding pigeon Jesus? On the last day of the semester, Hiyoko went to clean the track room only to find Okosan going to town on a bunch of beans on the floor. Which, sure, why not? I know protein intake is hard. Hiyoko decided to join in, and the two had a great time devouring them. When it was time to get a summer job, I had Hiyoko accept, and this time I didn't give it to Ryouta so I could try to figure out how to get the cafe ending. While working, Hiyoko met a nice parrot named Rabu, who came to the cafe pretty much every day. One night after work, Hiyoko was threatened by some Pigeons, but before they could hurt her, Azami showed up out of nowhere to save the day and beat the shit out of them. Azami actually has an ending too, and I was wondering how you got it, but based on this, it must have something to do with the cafe. Hiyoko invited Okosan to the summer festival, where he was excited about all the food. However, after the fireworks started, he lost himself in a feral rage. Not gonna lie, the idea of courting him feels even stranger than Kazuaki. Like, this is just straight up a bird. On the last day of Hiyoko's summer job, Azami showed up and immediately got upset upon seeing Rabu. This was because Rabu actually had a secret past. What? What? He used to be a living legend, kid. The leader of the toughest bikers around. Back then, there wasn't a bird on the night roads who didn't know the name of Hasokawa Blaster. Sure, why not? Anyway, Azami had been in Rabu's gang, but after she confessed her feelings for him, he completely abandoned it. This left her understandably upset, but the conversation spiraled out of control pretty fast. 6 months of tea and cake and you look like Mr. Fababean. Mr. Fababean. What the fuck is happening? What? However, as mad as Azami was, Hiyoko pointed out the fact that her scooter still had the word blaster on it, showing that she still cared about him. Rabu explained that he loved Azami, but he had wanted to go straight so he could properly provide for her. She accepted his apology, they got back together, and then the credits started rolling. What the fuck? wait, no, it's not over. Stop the credits. What the fuck is going on? This is supposed to be the story of my romance, not theirs. But the strangeness didn't end there. After Hiyoko finished her last day of work, I was treated to this commercial. Those who want to see others. What the fuck? Those who want to be seen. The soothing mecca for all such people. Torimi Cafe, Pocus Forest. Tea next to chattering birds. Curry rice to die for. No way, is that actually real? That's so funny, what the fuck? Yes, Torimi Cafe is in fact a real bird-watching cafe in Japan, and in fact, all of the character sprites were actual birds who lived there at the time. I've never been to Japan, but if I ever go, I absolutely will be going here, because this is the best advertisement I've ever seen. We did in fact get the cafe ending, but since this is Hiyoko's story, the game continued. One day after school started back, Okosan told Hiyoko about a vision he had had about someone named Lord Pooty. When Hiyoko went along with his story and celebrated Lord Pooty's return, Okosan was overjoyed and declared that Hiyoko might even get to meet him one day before running off. Not long after this, it was the school festival, but this time Ryouta and Okosan seemed to be fighting over something. Oh my god. Oh, the bow. Oh, you look so handsome, Okosan. Okosan was not happy about wearing the dress, but once he saw his own reflection, he got a little, too happy about it, if you know what I mean. A few weeks later, at track practice, Shuu showed up and ominously tried to give Okosan steroids. Okosan did not want to take them, so Hiyoko drank them instead. Whatever, anything to make the doctor get lost. Gulp gulp, we're gonna fucking die. Oh god, no, what are you doing? This is not for humans. Okosan was very grateful. Hiyoko somehow gained 10 wisdom, which seemed to please the doctor, and Hiyoko didn't die, so it was truly a win-win-win situation for everyone. One day, Okosan asked Hiyoko where to find pudding, and she told him the grocery store. But apparently, they were out of stock, so Okosan came back and beat the shit out of her, which is, not great since she's trying to, you know, date him. Hiyoko bought Okosan the racing blend beans for Legumantines since he's on the track team, and he seemed to love them. After finals, Hiyoko went to ask Okosan if the track team was doing anything during the break, but instead she found Okosan preparing to leave. He had apparently dropped out of school and was going on a quest to find the true pudding. Hiyoko declared that she was going with him, and while he protested at first, the two set off for a journey that spanned many years. Eventually, they found the ancient ruins of pudding, and upon opening a chest, Okosan ascended to his true form. Lord Pooty himself. And so the world was engulfed in pudding? It was what? According to the fundamental principles of Okosan's new universe, every living being carries pudding in its heart. What? Okay. I love that I have no idea whether that was the true ending or not the true ending. It was in fact the true ending, meaning we would have to do his route again, but slightly worse. Since I was running out of safe routes away from the doctor, I decided to go ahead and get Sakuya's true ending and Okosan's less true ending. I knew Sakuya should be easy to get, as I was pretty sure the only thing I needed to do differently was study music every day. I did that, going through his route again, picking the exact same options, until I didn't. Alright. Oh no! Fuck. I did not mean to hit that, no! Okosan destroyed Sakuya's party, but hopefully Hiyoko's love of music was strong enough to get to the true ending. I was worried when we got the exact same scene of Sakuya saying that he had run away from home and Hiyoko convincing him that he should tell his father about his love of music. But this time, after the original scene ended, we got a new epilogue. Sakuya was now living with Hiyoko, presumably after being kicked out by his family, but he was playing his first concert that night, so that was exciting. Hiyoko asked if he had contacted Yuuya, but he had absolutely no interest in doing that. However, a little while later, Hiyoko received a letter from Yuuya. He said he had something very important to tell Sakuya whenever he was ready to speak with him. I forgot just how interesting these brothers and their dynamic are. I wonder if we'll find out what Yuuya meant during his route? But either way, with that, we've officially, sadly, gotten both of Sakuya's endings. Now it was Okosan's turn. I was less sure about how to get his not full ending, so I decided that I would do everything pretty much the same, but try to pick the opposite answers from last time. Nothing really changed, except sometimes he got a bit more annoyed with Hiyoko, and when he had to drink the steroids from Shuu, he passed out cold. The doctor seems happy, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Yeah, no shit, I think you just killed a man. Or a bird. Or an Okosan. So yeah, I thought our chances of getting the true ending again were pretty low. To put the final nail in the coffin, Hiyoko refused to join him on his pudding odyssey. But things didn't go like I expected. We cut to some people in something called the Hawk Party discussing Hiyoko and how she failed as the human representative, and thus, they must execute the termination sequence. I love watching the stars at night. Girl, I think you're about to get murdered. I can feel the I did this so I didn't have to be scared yet. What the fuck? I think I just heard something. Oh, you don't need to know. It'll all be over in 2 seconds. Yeah, okay. Alright. Okay. Well, I guess we had to die eventually. Yeah, I guess I did a few too many things to piss Okosan off, which, whoops, but in my defense, I didn't think Hiyoko would get murdered because of it. I decided to load a save and go back a few months. I just changed a few things, like drinking Okosan steroids for him and accepting his offer to go with him. But I didn't have to worry because right after they headed off on their adventure, the credits rolled without getting the Lord Pooty epilogue. Whatever combination of things I had done was enough to not get murdered, while also not good enough for the true ending, which was perfect. While I was wrapping up loose ends, I decided to go ahead and finish Azami's route, since I was pretty sure all I had to do differently was select her martial arts instead of her scooter during the confrontation with Rabu. Sure enough, I was right. Instead of getting back together with him, Azami used her martial arts to beat the shit out of him. them. A few days later, Hiyoko found Azami outside of a used bike shop where she had apparently sold her scooter. She seemed kind of sad, but at peace with her decision. All of a sudden, the Pigeons who tried to attack Hiyoko before came back, but once again, Azami and Hiyoko were able to beat the shit out of them. Afterwards, Azami deemed Hiyoko worthy enough to be a Sparrow, and they formed an all-new girl delinquent gang. And so we became Legends of the Midnight Roads. Okay, I wish we were lesbians, but that's fine too, I guess. With that, the only characters whose routes we had yet to do were Yuuya, Shuu, and some mystery character. I assumed that the mystery bird had something to do with Shuu, but since I was avoiding him and his route like the plague, I decided I would go with my boy Yuuya first. Hiyoko, of course, joined the infirmary club, and I decided to do math class every time, since that seemed to be the best fit. When Hiyoko helped in the infirmary for the first time, I once again chose to respect Yuuya's wishes and not look in Shuu's desk. At the sports festival, Hiyoko and Yuuya hung out at the first aid tent, and later in the summer, Hiyoko reprimanded Yuuya for being a ladies' man at the school store. One of the unfortunate things about this game is that if you're constantly trying new options like I was, you end up seeing a lot of each bird's route before you actually do them. I was hoping we'd get some new content soon, and luckily, during Tanabana, we did. Though it wasn't what I was expecting. What? The Mad Love of a Fallen Angel? Fuck it, I'm clicking it. Mad Love of a Fallen Angel. I've never seen that. A few days later, as Ryouta and Hiyoko headed to the cafeteria, they heard a loud crash. Then, the cutest little bird I've ever seen arrived. Hiyoko started panicking because the red spot on his chest made it look like he was bleeding, but Ryouta pointed out that he's a Luzon and they just look like that. Then he introduced himself. Correct, I'm Higuri Anghel. The what? The fallen servant of God, stained with the blood of sin. You're adorable, that's what you are. Oh, hi. You're very gender. Anghel continued to babble on in deranged gibberish until he left as abruptly and strangely as he appeared. Now I know this was finally supposed to be Yuuya's turn, but I couldn't resist Anghel's everything, so I switched gears and committed fully to his route. I didn't have to wait long to see him again, as just a few days later there was another crash and Anghel appeared in Hiyoko's classroom. He asked Hiyoko if she remembered him, and she shockingly replied that he was a fallen angel escaped from the demonic prison of Judica, which, where the hell did that come from? Before I could even process that, he left in a panic. On the last day of the semester, Hiyoko was unsurprised when she heard another crash and Anghel appeared. This time, he told her he was about to open a gate to the other world, aka the infirmary, because there was a lot of evil magic inside. But I thought that sounded pretty intense, and we had a lot of year left to play, so Hiyoko told him to hold off for now, which he agreed to. Despite Anghel's strangeness, if he could sense that she was fucked up and evil and wanted to stop him, then he had my trust. Hiyoko invited Anghel to the summer festival, and while he didn't quite seem to get what was going on, they had a good time. When Hiyoko went back to school, she once again found a missing student ID, but this time she recognized the name on it. Akagi Yoshio from class 2-2. Before she could take it to the staff room, Anghel appeared out of nowhere and begged Hiyoko not to say that name, basically giving away that the missing student had been him this entire time. Honestly, that was a huge relief because I had been like 99% sure that that bird was dead. Anghel was very upset with Hiyoko using his given name, so to change the subject, Hiyoko accepted the contract, whatever the hell that meant. Anghel was happy though, and he scribbled on his ID card and then gave it to Hiyoko for some reason. A few days later, Yuuya visited Hiyoko in class and Anghel was with him. Apparently, they had come to an understanding and were on the same side according to Anghel. In reality, Yuuya had advised him not to enter the infirmary, and when Anghel kept trying to go in anyways, Yuuya picked him up and brought him to Hiyoko since he said they were friends. With that, Yuuya left, leaving Hiyoko to babysit Anghel. Thanks, Yuuya. Sorry he hijacked your route. At the school festival, Hiyoko used her day off to go to the manga booth where she found Anghel. He showed her his mapping pen, his weapon, before having a flash of pain. Hiyoko agreed to tend his booth for him so he could do whatever he needed to do, which he seemed to appreciate. A little after that, Hiyoko found Anghel muttering about demon spores outside of the infirmary. He declared that Shuu was the root of all evil, but since he wasn't here at the moment, he'd hold off on attacking him for now. Okay, is he gonna kill Shuu? I'm here for that. Fuck that guy. On Christmas Eve, Hiyoko heard the doorbell ring. And yeah, somehow she has a doorbell on her cave that doesn't even have a door. But anyways, she found a crucifix and a note from Anghel asking her to meet him at the promised place for the judgment. Whatever the hell that means. At the shrine on New Year's Day, Hiyoko bumped into Anghel, who was having a breakdown over which amulet to buy. Thankfully, Hiyoko was able to help him out. I must decide which one will most likely aid me in the... How about traffic safety? You strike me as the type to fly out into the road and get hit by a car, Anghel. Traffic safety is good. Ryouta, can you give us a traffic safety charm? I love this game so much. It's so stupidly charming. Legumantines came around and I knew exactly what beans Hiyoko should buy. Bitter like his soul. Hiyoko went to give them to him in his classroom, but Anghel pulled us out of the room in a panic. Not because they were in danger, but because he didn't want to be teased about having a girlfriend. And Hiyoko was a damn good girlfriend who chose the exact right beans. Though, of course, Anghel had to be super dramatic and deranged about it, but honestly, that's what I love about him. After finals, Hiyoko found a note on her desk from Anghel, announcing that the time had come and that she needed to meet him at the infirmary. But I never would have predicted what we saw when she got there. Huh? What the fuck? Hello? Okay, so he's right and based. He's correct and based. Okay, sorry Anghel, you're right. Shuu parroted back all of the insane nonsense that Anghel has been saying this whole time, but what? I am Wallenstein. You are? You must agree that it's a fitting name for the Dark King. It is? With that declaration, Shuu attacked Anghel and began to drain his energy into the tree. Apparently, this was all because Anghel harbors an angel of darkness, and this was foretold back from ancient times or something. As if I couldn't be any more confused, Shuu ended his speech by summoning something called Amnesia. Anghel was ready to give up, but have you forgotten, Anghel? I still have that ID card with the weird squiggles you drew. We still have hope. All we have to do is kill this final boss thingy, right? Those words touched Anghel's heart, and he gave Hiyoko his mapping pen. Sacrum, the holy spear. And then we entered an honest-to-God final boss battle with some absolutely banging music. Hiyoko had 2 different attack options each turn, and I honestly wasn't sure if there was even a right or wrong answer, so I just picked the top one each time. I low-key started panicking that we should have been doing gym this entire time, because every time Hiyoko was attacked, her vitality would go down a good bit. Thankfully, we were able to defeat Amnesia before it got down to 0. Shuu promised to summon more and more Amnesias until they eventually overpowered us, and then ran off into the night, never to be seen again. An indeterminate amount of time later, Hiyoko apparently regained all of her memories that Anghel had been talking about this whole time. It was something about how Hiyoko had stabbed and imprisoned him because he became a demon or something. Hiyoko tried to convince him that since Shuu was gone, he could live a normal life, but at the mention of his given name, Anghel began cowering in the corner, so maybe not. And then the route ended as out of nowhere and nonsensically as it began, leaving me with way more questions than answers. I wonder if that Shuu is actually trying to summon demons in every route, or is it? I am so confused. Why is he calling himself Wallerstein? Okay, but that we got his ending, and that's all I care about. But now it was actually for real time to do Yuuya's route, which I hoped would provide at least some clarity on what the fuck is going on. I played the game exactly as before, except this time at Tanabata, Hiyoko wished to rule the world from the shadows. When Hiyoko found Yuuya and the doctor arguing, Hiyoko once again corroborated his false alibi, and on the last day of the semester, Hiyoko once again chose not to bring up the missing students to Shuu. Hiyoko invited Yuuya out to the summer festival, and they had a surprisingly cute and romantic time. However, on their way back home, Hiyoko once again confronted Yuuya about lying to the doctor. He turned the question back around on her, asking her why she played along. Hiyoko explained that Shuu looked really mad at Yuuya, so she was worried he would do something to him, and apparently her hunter-gatherer instincts were right. According to Yuuya, if she hadn't stepped in, Yuuya would be in little bags in the freezer by now, which yikes. Somehow, despite everything, Hiyoko didn't seem to believe him. Please, give me a straight answer, Yuuya. That was a straight answer. I'm always straight in love. Almost always. Bisexual king. Before Hiyoko could question him anymore, Yuuya got antsy and asked if she would be fine walking home on her own. Hiyoko said of course she would be, and he told her to head straight there and not to look back. What on earth is going on? He told me not to look back, but what? A gunshot? He sent an email to Hiyoko later that night to check in, but both Hiyoko and I want to know what the hell was actually going on with him. At the school festival, Yuuya's class was doing a butler cafe, and since her class was doing a rival maid cafe, Hiyoko went to spy on him. He was dressed up very dapper, and they had a flirty little conversation. A few days later, Hiyoko bumped into Yuuya talking with the janitor, Mr. One. But I don't think we'll find any evidence. Right, I'll check with the others. Yuuya! That is that then. Alright, bye. But it was pretty clear what was actually going on. They were both trying to find evidence against Shuu. But Yuuya obviously didn't want to talk about it with Hiyoko. Not long after, Hiyoko wanted to go ask Yuuya some advice for picking her major, but some other birds told her that he wasn't really studious and probably wasn't even going to go to college. Hiyoko still wanted to talk to him and eventually found him being fidgety in the school store. He almost immediately dragged them out of there, and when Hiyoko asked why, he evaded the question. Yuuya then started to try to convince Hiyoko to stay away from him, implying that it wasn't safe. What do you mean? Well, you might get, what? Shot, knifed, dismembered, drowned, buried alive, that sort of thing. Yuuya, what the fuck? Hiyoko and I's confusion only grew when Yuuya told us he was going to disappear soon, and it would be best for Hiyoko to forget about him. But he did tell us some information as a parting gift. You know the rumors that missing students end up as meat in the cafeteria and quill pens in the shop? Live an honest, happy life! Adieu! No, Yuuya, get the fuck back here, what the fuck? After that, there was nothing to do all the way until Legumentine's, where Hiyoko bought Yuuya black beans. However, Yuuya wasn't at school, and when Hiyoko called, he wouldn't say where he was. After Hiyoko begged, he agreed to meet up with her just this once. They met up at the park later that night, and Yuuya was very excited about his black beans. A few days later, Hiyoko spotted Yuuya out in the city, but upon seeing her, he ran away. Hiyoko grabbed his arm to try to stop him, but realized his wing was broken. Before she could do anything else, someone started shooting at them, so Yuuya grabbed Hiyoko's hand and they ran away. At this point, Yuuya finally agreed that he owed Hiyoko some answers. Do you know the Hawk Party and the Dove Party wanted me? I know the Hawk Party killed me in one thing. The Dove Party believes we should live peacefully with the remaining humans, while the Hawk Party believes we should exterminate them to make room for birds. Oh, interesting. That's fun. Okay. St. Pigeonations was actually an experimental institute created by the Hawk Party, though Shuu was their only known working operative. In return, the Dove Party dispatched Yuuya to fight against him. This entire time, time, Shuu has been working on anti-human biological weapons, and to conduct his research, he's been kidnapping and killing students, then disposing of their bodies via cafeteria food and school pens. I know this was implied earlier, but having direct confirmation made it 10 times worse. Yuuya doesn't know why Shuu has never attempted to hurt Hiyoko, but he suspects that he doesn't actually have political affiliations and simply aligns with the Hawk Party to pursue his research. Yuuya had been trying to gather evidence to expose Shuu and the Hawk Party, but it was too much for him to do alone. Now he was on the run and planned to leave the city tonight. But since Hiyoko could now be recognized as one of his associates, he decided to give her the option of coming with him. Hiyoko of course wanted to go with him no matter the danger, and the two ran off together, continuing the fight against injustice. Even though I was still missing a lot of information, this route did give us the most world building so far. But now there was officially nothing left I could do but try to romance the freaky-ass Dr. Bird. My one saving grace was that maybe, just maybe, I'd get some more answers about his motives. Obviously, Hiyoko once again joined the infirmary club and studied math every day since Shuu is so obsessed with knowledge. When Hiyoko headed to her first day at the infirmary, I had a grim realization. Oh, I'm gonna get Yuuya killed in this route. Oh no. Baby, I'm so sorry. This time, when Yuuya asked us not to touch Shu's desk, I had Hiyoko ignore him and organize the files. She was immediately interrupted by Shuu, who not so subtly reminded her that curiosity killed the cat. Hiyoko swore to never do something like that ever again, but unfortunately for both of us, we would have to. At the beginning of summer, Hiyoko headed to the infirmary where she told Shuu it was to hear his voice, which apparently sounds like Snufkin? His response was, you're even stranger than I had thought. I'm fascinated. How I'd love to experiment on you. Girl, run! Girl, run! Thankfully, he was too busy to dissect us at the moment and just kicked Hiyoko out. A few days before summer break, I once again got the scene where Sakuya and Yuuya fought over who was the better swimmer, and while I would usually pick Sakuya, I'm gonna get Yuuya killed in a minute. I probably should say Yuuya. Oh, that'd be bad, yeah. And sure enough, right after that, Hiyoko saw Shuu and Yuuya arguing, but this time, Hiyoko had to call Yuuya out on his lie. What a pity, Yuuya. It would seem that you're somewhat lacking in basic truthfulness. I think we need to have a long, serious discussion alone. Alright, rest in peace, Yuuya. On the last day of the semester, Hiyoko went to ask about summer infirmary cleaning, but this time, she also asked Shuu about the elephant in the room. Alright, I think this is where he's gonna kill me, chat. Missing students. But he didn't. Instead, he just vaguely threatened to make Hiyoko disappear, so yay. Hiyoko invited Shuu to the summer festival. Surprisingly and unfortunately, he actually showed up despite the very low odds. But I didn't have anything better to do, so I decided that even if it was a 5%, a 0.5, oh my god, 0.05% chance, it was still worth trying. I've been studying math this whole time and I can't even read a basic fucking percentage. He still didn't really want to go to the festival, but he agreed to go in exchange for a lock of Hiyoko's hair. For some reason, this seemed to be the biggest red flag to Hiyoko so far, and not the, you know, rumors of murder and forced cannibalism. But they had a relatively normal time at the festival otherwise. On the night where Hiyoko normally found Yuuya digging for trash, this time Shuu was there in his place. He seemed caught off guard and had mud in his wing, so he was definitely doing something that would get Hiyoko killed if she knew about it, but that's basically the entire point of this route, so she asked him about it anyways. He simply said he was disposing of things he no longer needed before fleeing into the night. When school started back up again, Hiyoko once again found the missing student ID, but this time, instead of bringing it to Kazuaki, she stupidly brought it to Shuu, who was of course very grateful to receive evidence he hadn't covered up yet. At the school festival, Hiyoko was surprised to see Shuu out and about and decided to invite him to lunch. She followed him to the back of the school near the incinerator, and wow, I wonder why he's there. He made some dumb excuse about getting rid of the science club's leftovers. Hiyoko took the hint and changed the subject by asking if he wanted to walk around with her, which of course he refused. A few days later, Hiyoko found Kazuaki and Shuu arguing over data, and this time she agreed with Shuu, but he honestly didn't seem to care that much either way. It took until November for Hiyoko to realize that Yuuya had been missing this entire time. When she asked Shuu about it, he simply said that Yuuya would never be coming back. Shuu half-heartedly tried to convince Hiyoko that Yuuya was just skipping school, but Hiyoko caught on pretty quick that Shuu was involved in his disappearance. He then abruptly asked why Hiyoko decided to join the infirmary team, to which she answered it was because she liked him. He seemed strangely tickled by that answer, and Hiyoko left wondering if what she felt was love or fear, and Queen, I can tell you what you should be feeling. On Christmas Eve, Hiyoko's doorbell rang and a delivery bird dropped off a package from Shuu. Inside the small box is a quill pen. Oh my god, it's beautiful. A real white bird feather. Oh my god, girl, please. Is he really giving this to me? It looks pricey. Doing this right after Yuuya's route was so, like, torturous. The big one is, huh? It looks like a roast chicken. Oh my god, 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 oh my god. Thank you, doctor. Yum. Despite everything, I honestly had not expected Shuu to literally force us to single-handedly eat Yuuya. I assumed he'd just be ground him into lunch meat like the rest of the missing students. But no, of course Shuu had to make it a gazillion times worse. This small scene, specifically Hiyoko's obliviousness to the whole thing, genuinely got to me and made me feel gross in a way that I've only felt from a few other games. But hey, it was nice and sunny on New Year's, so Hiyoko headed down to the shrine where she of course bumped into Shuu. Shuu was not there to celebrate, but instead to stake out potential victims. The fact that he was being so open about his plans now to Hiyoko was a really, really bad sign. For Legumentine's, Hiyoko once again bought black beans because why not, and Shuu, was Shuu. So what did you want? Were you hoping I would transfer you an avian ovum? No, sir. I fucking was not wanting that, you freak. He did begrudgingly accept our beans before promptly kicking Hiyoko out. On Hiyoko's last day of infirmary duty, she walked in to find something horrible. Something stinks in here. It's coming from the bed behind the curtain. I'm scared. The sheets are stained brilliant red. At the foot of the bed lies a wash basin. It's liquid pink, with a stack of scissors coated in blood and feathers in the bottom. It was at this point Hiyoko finally realized that Shuu had killed the missing students and Yuuya, but before she could run away and report him— "You're early today, Miss Tosaka. God damn it. Oh, forgive me. I just finished dismembering another student and hadn't cleaned up yet. Please pay it no mind." Yeah, and of course he had locked the door behind him. Even though it was pretty clear that Hiyoko was going to die here, I still had a small bit of hope. Girl, you are a human. Kill this bird. Step on him. But alas, Hiyoko did not listen to me and instead listened to Shuu. He thanked Hiyoko for inadvertently helping him to destroy evidence, and when she asked where Yuuya was, he stroked her stomach, which fucking ew, I hate this man. Shuu, of course, reveled in Hiyoko's anguish, but he did appreciate all of her help throughout the year and her affection for him. So, as a reward, he planned to cut off her head and keep it by his side forever, which was, just great, thanks. Hiyoko was frozen with fear, and without another word from her, Shuu followed through on his promise and cut off her head, ending her life. But the horrors weren't over yet. Since Shuu stole Hiyoko's head, which was technically property of the Hawk Party, they sent out a team to deal with him. While on the run, Shuu confessed to Hiyoko's head that he actually had started developing feelings for her, or at least her head, but he wanted to confirm her feelings for him. "You loved me, did you not?" Woo, yes, yes, yes. I don't know what I'll pick. I'm so glad I got to kill you. Good night, Mr. Saka. Okay. What the fuck? Was that the good ending or the bad ending for him? Actually, my guess is that's the full ending. My guess is in the other one he just kills you. Ah, cute. Great. That was in fact Shu's true ending, and definitely the happier one, since in this one, at least he's confirmed to be fucking dead too. In order to get his normal ending, you have to study anything but math the entire time, which I did. But seeing Yuuya again and knowing what I would have to do to him again made me a bit emotional. Oh, Yuuya. Hi, Yuuya. I love you, Yuuya. I'm sorry, Yuuya. The rest of the run went smoothly, and I was graced with the exact same murder scene minus the epilogue. Yippee. Now that we had officially gone through every route, it was time to try to fulfill the promise, whatever that meant, and get the true ending. The game immediately began differently. Is there anything you desire? I can grant you whatever you wish. Tell me. A strange bird once said that. Who was that bird talking to? Surprisingly, nothing else changed with the intro, so I decided to treat it like a normal route until it proved me otherwise. That meant I need to figure out who I wanted to romance. I'm sorry, Sakuya. I do love you. I do fear Yuuya is my number one. I literally ate him, so I think it's only fair that I date him. So I joined the infirmary club, studied math, and spent time with him when I could. After the midterms, I got another memory. I've had this dream a lot recently. I can see a little house on the other side of the fence. I wonder who lives there. I don't think it's anyone I know. Ryouta's next to me. My parents are here too. We're all together again, but Mom? Dad? Hey, wake up, please. So apparently Hiyoko saw her parents die? To be honest, I hadn't thought much about her not having parents and just assumed it was part of the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but clearly there was something more to it. After finals, I was once again rewarded with a flashback. Ryouta, my parents, and me at a stranger's house. The strange bird who comes to me is a magician. Hello? Okay, that makes me think of Anghel's route. He says he'll grant any wish that Ryouta and I make. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. Why had Shuu once promised to grant Hiyoko and Ryota's wish? He's not exactly a generous guy, so he must have had ulterior motives. It wasn't until Hiyoko went back to school after break that something new happened. Ryouta was missing from the classroom, and when Hiyoko asked about it, Kazuaki told her that he was in the infirmary. There was a fade to black, and then suddenly— Oh, it's purple. I'm late. Oh shit, it's his POV? Oh, yeah, we were now playing as Ryouta for some reason. It was apparently the next day, and Sakuya admonished Ryouta for showing up to class late. And when Ryouta asked where Hiyoko was, Kazuaki replied that she wasn't there, which was weird. But hey, Kazuaki finally had to teach the history of bird kind, which meant it was time to get some actual lore. Basically, back before birds were sentient, the AH5N1 virus appeared. It originated in birds, but eventually mutated and turned incredibly deadly to humans. In response, humans engineered a different virus that was supposed to be deadly to birds in an attempt to try to prevent AH5N1 from becoming a pandemic. But instead of killing birds, it made them grow much smarter, starting with doves and eventually spreading to all different kinds of birds. Since their plan to stop the virus failed, most humans died off, and while they live peacefully with the birds now, there were large conflicts in the past. Unfortunately, the bell rang, so that's all we get for now. Ryouta was still worried about Hiyoko, but before he could call her, Kazuaki asked him to go get a box with the handouts for the next period. Ryouta went to the teacher's office, found it pretty easily, and headed back to class, but things quickly took a very strange turn. Did you cut your wing, Kawara? I don't think so. It's bleeding. It is. Did I scratch myself on something? It doesn't hurt at all. No, this isn't my blood. What the fuck? What the fuck? What is that? There's blood leaking through a corner of the box. I feel sick, but I reach out to open the lid anyways. Inside the box is a human head. Oh, fuck. She wasn't late. She was here all along. We're in a whole new game now, baby! Hiyoko, the main character, the girl I've been playing as for multiple hours, was dead. Ryouta started freaking out, but before anything could be done, an alarm went off and the school entered a state of emergency. Ryouta wanted to stay with Hiyoko, but Sakuya bluntly told him that she was gone and that they needed to go to the evacuation zone, which happened to be in the gym. Is this Danganronpa now? What the hell? When they got there, Ryouta heard other students discussing how they too had received different pieces of a human body, presumably Hiyoko's. But apparently, since it was a dead human and not a dead bird, no one was too concerned, which, rude. Soon, the principal came on the monitor and announced that there was a natural disaster outside and that they would need to stay in the school. However, none of the birds believed that, and they started angrily demanding answers, which they didn't get because the principal's feed cut. Okosan, not understanding that Hiyoko was dead, wanted to go and find her, so Ryouta asked if he could go and get her body. Kazuaki reluctantly agreed to let him go, and Sakuya invited himself along in order to get to the bottom of everything, and maybe, just maybe, because he had also cared about Hiyoko. But on the way back to the classroom, they discovered that the entire school had been covered by a gray dome. This was presumably to protect the school from the natural disaster, but Sakuya and Ryouta still weren't convinced there was even a natural disaster going on in the first place. They made it back to the classroom, but when Sakuya went to go get Hiyoko's head, it was gone. Right then, Yuuya of all birds appeared. He gave his condolences for what happened to Hiyoko, and then explained that he and the other infirmary staff had gathered up her remains and brought them to the chemistry lab to perform an autopsy. The doctor should be proceeding with the autopsy by now. Oh god, he did this. It seemed Ryouta agreed with me and felt that the doctor was suspicious, but Sakuya vehemently disagreed. Yuuya assured Ryouta that he understood, which is why he sent Kazuaki to watch over him. Yuuya also believed that Hiyoko's death and the natural disaster were connected, but he wanted to continue investigating on his own. He suggested that Sakuya and Ryouta talk to One in the maintenance office, so they headed there next. Sakuya was a bit miffed about following Yuuya's advice, and when Ryouta told him to be nicer to his brother, Sakuya went off on him. I really hope that somehow the brothers can reconcile through all this, since we didn't get to see that in either of their routes. When they arrived at the maintenance office, One tried to get them to leave until Ryouta mentioned that it was Yuuya who had sent them. After that, he became much more willing to speak to us. One revealed that even though he knew a lot about the school, he knew nothing about the Grey Dome. He also let us know that cell service and internet had been cut off since this morning. He suggested that they check out the headmaster's office because that's the one place in the school One's never been. Saki and Ryouta agreed to check it out and also hoped that they could speak to the principal while they were there. But first, they decided to investigate the wall and the lab. At the wall, the boys discovered that it was made of a thick metal, maybe iron, and it wouldn't be possible to break through. However, they did eventually find a hatchway that they could potentially use to escape if they could figure out how to open it. They headed to the lab next, where they found Kazuaki monitoring Shuu as he laid out pieces of Hiyoko's body. Ryouta seemed just as uncomfortable with Shuu handling her body as I did. Shuu told them that he hadn't started the autopsy yet, but would let us know when he had information. Right when they were leaving, Shuu stopped Ryouta to give him a hint, which was that he had forgotten something. Something very important. Oh, isn't it beautiful, Mr. Kawara? The sound of your life crumbling apart around you. I take it does not suit your tastes. Very well. He was rather fond of the unusual himself. What? Who the hell was the he she was talking about? God, I hate this freak. I know he had something to do with this, but we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there. The boys headed to the headmaster's office, but it was locked and they got no reply. Sakuya was even rude to the headmaster, so apparently the only person at the school he respected was the doctor for some reason. Since they couldn't break down the door, they decided to ask Kazuaki if there was a spare key. But all of a sudden, Ryouta started hearing a very strange noise. Oh, what the fuck? Hi. I don't like you. Yeah, so now this game has turned into FNAF, and there was a giant mechanical scarecrow thing trying to kill us. It smashed through the window, but the boys ran away before it could attack them. Thankfully, the creature, whatever it was, moved slowly, so they didn't have a difficult time escaping. They headed back to the lab to warn Kazuaki. He suggested that they warn the other students about it, since most of them had left the gym at this point. Shuu, of course, was only interested in the potential of dissecting it. He had, however, completed the autopsy and let them know that Hiyoko's cause of death had been from asphyxiation, either from poison or illness, and thus she had been dismembered after death. Shuu also told them that he believed her time of death had been yesterday after school, which lined up with our last time playing as her. Shuu asked Ryouta if he had seen her yesterday, but Ryouta hadn't, as he went straight home from school yesterday alone. Neither Kazuaki nor Shuu had seen her yesterday afternoon either, even though we know she was headed to the infirmary, and that's where Shuu claimed he was, so, Ryouta asked Kazuaki for a spare key to the headmaster's room, and he told him he'd get them one from the vice principal. The boys headed out once again, but the teachers had more to say. Kawara is a strange boy. I wonder why he lied about going straight home. Oh? Did we kill her? When we cut back to Sakuya and Ryouta, they were arguing about whether or not they could trust the doctor. Sakuya revealed that the reason he thinks so highly of the doctor was because he made a medicine that helped cure his father's illness and saved his life. That does make a little more sense as to why Sakuya seems to respect him so much, but I hope he would change his tune if he knew about the experiments. The boys headed back to the gym to check on the students there, and they found Okosan, who was upset at being left behind. They asked if he had seen Hiyoko after school, but he hadn't. Instead, he saw a blood-stained bird going into the infirmary. Oh, maybe it was Anghel. The boys headed back to the maintenance room and got One up to speed. Right when they started to tell him about the scarecrow thing, Yuuya showed up and said that he had also seen it. He also said that he was going to head over to the lab to keep watch over the doctor and Hiyoko's body, which was great since Kazuaki is, well, Kazuaki. Before he headed out, Sakuya asked if Yuuya had seen Hiyoko yesterday, but surprisingly, Yuuya corroborated Shuu's alibi and claimed that they had both been in the infirmary all evening. I guess it could be someone other than Shuu, but I still think he must have had something to do with it. On their way back to the lab, Ryouta thought he heard a voice coming from the library, but when he and Sakuya went in, there was no one there. But I knew that Ryouta had somehow heard Nageki, who was somehow having a conversation with Hiyoko. What the hell was going on? Back at the lab, the boys reported their new findings, and Kazuaki gave them the key to the headmaster's room. Now that Yuuya was there to keep watch on Shuu, Kazuaki decided to come with us. They opened the door to the headmaster's office, only to find him slumped over on his desk, dead. Shuu was called over to determine the cause of death, and he suspected poisoning. Apparently, the video from earlier had just been spliced together from a previous disaster drill. Sakuya and Ryouta searched the office for clues. They found a folder on Hiyoko, which was sealed up, and some kind of control panel that might be for the dome, but it was locked. They decided to head to the maintenance room to see if One would have any luck breaking open the file. As they were leaving, Shuu stopped Ryouta to ask him if he had remembered the thing he had forgotten, which Ryouta obviously hadn't. Shuu then said that Ryouta wouldn't need to use his brain to solve the mystery, he only needed to keep going, implying that Shuu already knew the truth of the incident. Ryouta became even more angry, but Shuu wouldn't budge. I told you, you only need to keep going. Everything here is a plot that was laid out just for you after all. What? Shuu seemed to treat Ryouta differently from every other character, almost like he was fond of him in his own strange way. Regardless, I have a feeling that Ryouta is not going to like what he forgot. At the maintenance office, they asked One if he could break into the files, but he explained it would be difficult because if they brute force it, the files would spontaneously combust. The boys were shocked by this, since in theory these should just be ordinary documents, but obviously the school was hiding some deep secrets involving Hiyoko. Luckily, One had experience breaking locks like these and believed he could do it if given enough time. He also suggested that we ask Yuuya for help cracking the password for the control center, so the boys set off to find him. They were on their way back to the lab when they ran into the scarecrow again. Ryouta ran into the library, but got separated from Sakuya. Right before he was about to try to head to the lab again, Ryouta saw Nageki, and was confused as to why he was here alone instead of at the gym. Nageki didn't answer him, instead asking if he was Ryouta Kuwara, a friend that Hiyoko had told him about. After introducing himself, Nageki confirmed that Hiyoko hadn't come to the library after school, but instead that she had just been there. Before Ryouta could ask any questions, Nageki vanished, so he just decided to head to the lab. He reconvened with Yuuya and Sakuya, and then they all headed back over to the headmaster's office so Yuuya could hack the control panel. He was able to get in pretty easily, but the control panel apparently only had an open or close button, and that was it. Ryouta wondered if they should open it in case it was actually dangerous outside, but Sakuya seemed pretty insistent, so he pressed the open button. Unfortunately, it just opened the escape hatch and not the entire dome, but that would still allow us to see the state of the outside world. Yuuya and Shuu went back to the lab to watch over Hiyoko's body, while Sakuya, Ryouta, and Kazuaki went outside to check the hatch. The outside world looked perfectly clear, but Ryouta wanted to fly up there himself to make sure. Before he could, some other students beat him to the punch. I can't wait any longer, I'm going out. Oh god. Wait, come back at once. We don't know if it's safe out there yet. Oh fuck. Yeah! There was no natural disaster, but if they were to try to leave, they'd be shot, which actually was way worse. Ryouta was obviously upset by what just happened, but both Kazuaki and Sakuya convinced him to keep going. They headed back to the maintenance room to see if One had been able to crack the file. The boys updated him on the situation, and he finally decided to introduce himself properly. I am Leone JB, one of the greatest soaring wings of the Dub Party, S-Class agent, pleased to meet you. This wasn't really surprising since he was working with Yuuya and had a skill set way beyond the average maintenance worker, but it was still cool to officially meet another Dove operative. Leone had in fact opened the file, giving us a lot more information on Hiyoko. Hiyoko was chosen to be the human representative due to being strong, healthy, and having resistance to something called Sumatera influenza. But the Human Representative Initiative wasn't to foster peace or tolerance among birds and humans. The chosen individual will be a symbol of human concession, to wit, a hostage for birds. If the representative is to die in the school, the entire campus will be sealed off and all the birds inside will be given to the humans as prisoners. Oh, what the fuck? Interesting. So basically the dome was not there for our protection, but instead to allow the humans time to gather and kill all of the birds inside the school once it reopened. But that's why it was the Hawk Party who organized a human representative, not the Doves. If Hiyoko were to die, causing humans to kill all of the birds in the school, then the war between humans and birds would start again, likely resulting in the end of humanity. This also meant that they had a time limit to solve the mystery, and 4 of their 12 hours had already passed. Before they left to continue investigating, Leone pointed out that there was one more file on something called Operation Hatoful, but the bottom half was torn off, making it impossible to read. And, Sakuya pointed out, the file was spelled hurtful instead of Hatoful, just like how the text at the bottom of the screen changed after Hiyoko died. With that, they headed out to search for more clues. I decided that the best course of action was to go after the bloodstained bird Okosan saw going into the infirmary, since I was pretty sure that was Anghel. The boys headed to the lab to ask Yuuya if he had seen anyone like that yesterday, but he hadn't. He also pointed out that Okosan saw someone going to the infirmary, not into the infirmary, so unfortunately neither he nor the doctor could help. But Ryouta wasn't very convinced. They decided to head to the library and look for school records. On the way, Ryouta told Sakuya about Nageki, but when they got to the library, he wasn't there, so they just decided to start searching. Ryouta found some encyclopedias, but volume 6 was missing. As he was contemplating this, Nageki appeared behind him. Nageki told Ryouta that you could only get school records by request, which meant they were kept behind the reception desk in the back of the room. Sakuya yelled at Ryouta for talking to himself, and when Ryouta tried to explain that he was talking to Nageki, Sakuya couldn't see him. Ryouta asked Nageki if he was a hallucination, but Nageki ignored the question, just saying that he would remember everything soon. Then he asked if Ryouta had found the thing that he had forgotten, but before Ryouta could ask what Nageki meant, he disappeared. The school records were indeed right where Nageki said they would be, so the boys started reading. St. Pigeonations was apparently founded much more recently than they had thought, only 8 years earlier. There wasn't too much else interesting, except a line about how the medical center was shut down 5 years ago due to a fire. But that was weird because neither Sakuya nor Ryouta had ever heard of the school having a medical center in the first place. The mystery only deepened when they saw that a freshman, Fujishiro Nageki, had died in the basement where the fire started. This was strange to Ryouta since he had been talking to Nageki this whole time, but also strange to me since I thought Nageki had taken his own life in the library. What actually happened to him and why? Ryouta couldn't find Nageki to ask anything, so they set out to try to find the medical center, but they had no idea where it was. Ryouta mentioned that it might be within the old hall, and Sakuya pointed out that it was strange for a school this new to have an old hall to begin with. Regardless, Ryouta led them there, and Sakuya broke down the door. Unfortunately, besides a lot of dust, there was nothing outwardly out of the ordinary about the old building. They went to the reference room, and while there was a section for Operation Hatoful, there were no files there. But Sakuya did find a series of encyclopedias, this time with 2 copies of number 6 and none of number 9, so Ryouta decided they should go back to the library to investigate once they were done here. There was nothing else of interest on the first floor, and when they tried to go into the basement, they found it sealed off with a concrete wall. The boys turned to head back to the main building when they heard someone else break into the building. They panicked and began to run, thinking it was the Scarecrow, but stopped when they realized it was just a small, adorable little bird, aka Anghel. When Ryouta tried to get him to come back with them to the main building, Anghel refused. He claimed he couldn't rest until he sealed Ryouta in the building, but instead of confusion or panic, Ryouta reacted strangely.
So the time has come at last. I will not be stopped now, Crimson Angel of Judaica, come. What the fuck? What the fuck?
A boss battle started, but it didn't last long, as Sakuya immediately broke it up. Now that Ryouta was out of his trance, it was clear that Anghel had the power to literally manipulate others' perceptions of reality, which is why both Hiyoko and Ryouta suddenly seemed to know exactly how to play along with him. Sakuya accused Anghel of being involved in everything, but Anghel claimed to simply be following the demon spores, whatever that meant. They kept trying to figure out what he was talking about, with little success, when Ryouta finally realized that Anghel was probably the bird that Okosan saw yesterday. So Sakuya dragged him outside where Okosan confirmed it. Sakuya began interrogating Anghel about what happened yesterday. Anghel apparently couldn't enter the infirmary, but he did see Hiyoko enter, which led both me and Ryouta to the same conclusion.
Hiyoko was in the infirmary yesterday after school, but the doctor and Yuuya said that no one came and nothing happened. They're lying. Yeah, I'm confused as to why Yuuya is like covering. That doesn't make sense.
We then got to see some of Sakuya's memories. The first one showed how he grew up with his father constantly telling him that he was different and better than everyone else around him. The second one was when his father told him he'd be attending St. Pigeonations and to not disrespect the doctor, further explaining Sakuya's reverence for the man. Ryouta and Sakuya had apparently gone back to the maintenance room to go over the new information. Ryouta believed that Yuuya and the doctor were working together, which Sakuya completely rejected. Ryouta knew that they didn't have enough evidence to confront the pair, so he decided he had to search the infirmary. Sakuya volunteered to keep Shuu occupied in the lab so Ryouta would have some time to look, which was surprisingly kind of him. Before they left, Leone gave the pair a massive key that would unlock most of the school's doors, as well as a stun gun. Sakuya, continuing to be uncharacteristically thoughtful, gave them both to Ryouta since he would need them more. Anghel was already in the lab confronting Shuu, but Kazuaki quickly threw him out. Shuu seemed pretty unbothered, though he did reveal to Kazuaki that not only did he know about Anghel's powers, but he was the one who invited him to the school in the first place. Sakuya made it to the lab shortly after, but was surprised to not see Yuuya, who apparently had gone on a walk. That did put a bit of a wrench in their distraction plan, but the doctor was definitely a much bigger threat. Sakuya promised Shuu that he did not suspect him of anything, and then told him about how Shuu's medicine saved his father's life. Shuu returned Sakuya's heartfelt respect by telling him that his biases were worse than Ryouta Ryota's and that he couldn't wait to see his foundation crumble. So yeah, typical Shuu behavior. Ryouta managed to get into the infirmary using the massive key. He knew from his time in the infirmary that Shuu never let anyone touch his desk, so that's where he looked first. Inside the desk were medical records for 4 students: Ryouta, Hiyoko, Nageki, and Sakuya. Ryouta having a file made sense because he was in here so often, but Hiyoko and Sakuya were never sick. And Nageki's was completely different as it was directly from the medical center. Ryouta realized that there was actually a second piece of paper in Sakuya's file, but before he could read it, he was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he was still in the infirmary, but the records were gone. Ryouta was really confused, but this was actually starting to make sense to me. Yuuya must have been the one to knock him out to prevent him from seeing whatever was in Sakuya's file. Maybe he was working with the doctor because he had some sort of blackmail on him? While Ryouta was lying on the ground, he happened to see Hiyoko's bloody student ID card under Shu's desk. Ryouta wanted to believe that this confirmed his suspicions about the doctor, but he still felt like something was off, and so did I. There was no way a game this insane would let us off that easy. We cut back to Sakuya and Shuu discussing the crime in the lab.
Correct. Even if she were cut up last night and distributed this morning, it would involve a great deal of physical labor. What if it's Okosan? Hear me out. Hear me out. What if it's Okosan?
But that's just a theory, a game theory. Anyways, Ryouta arrived and asked Sakuya to come back to the maintenance room with him. But before they could actually leave, Shuu stopped them to say that despite his knowledge of the human body, he was not physically capable of committing the murder. Shuu was physically impaired on his right side due to an injury, but I wasn't buying his bullshit.
A human corpse is heavy. It seems a bit much to go dragging around with one wing, don't you think? But you've done it before. You've done it before, motherfucker. You cannot. I don't trust you.
The boys were finally able to head to the maintenance room, and on the way they discussed all of the new information. The knowledge of Shu's injury made Ryouta more sure that he and Yuuya had to be working together. And speak of the devil, right as he said that, Yuuya appeared.
I guess I'm the topic of choice among the boys as well as the girls now. Not that I mind, bisexual king.
Yuuya remained as carefree as always, but Ryouta and Sakuya wanted answers. They accused Yuuya of lying about having not seen Hiyoko at the infirmary yesterday with her bloody ID as proof, but Yuuya simply said he couldn't say anything. This pissed off Sakuya, but before anyone else could say anything, the scarecrow appeared and everyone had to run. Ryouta ran ahead of the brothers, and Yuuya offered to stay back and be a decoy. Sakuya accused him of just trying to divert suspicion, but it's pretty clear Yuuya would do literally anything to keep him safe. Because of that, Sakuya was able to catch up with Ryouta. However, Ryouta was a bit disappointed to see that Yuuya wasn't with him since now they couldn't interrogate him. Despite his reservations about Yuuya, Sakuya still didn't want to believe that he was capable of doing something like this, especially with Shuu, a man he greatly admired. Ryouta became lost in thought pondering Sakuya's situation, and didn't notice that he had slipped out the door to confront Shuu on his own. This was obviously fucking stupid, so Ryouta hurried after him. We then got another memory from Sakuya, this time of him contemplating blood. He'd always believed that his father and Shuu had pure blood, and Yuuya had impure blood due to their respective statuses, but now he wasn't sure why blood divided them in the first place. Sakuya eventually found Shuu in the infirmary and immediately demanded to know the truth about his and Yuuya's involvement in Hiyoko's murder. Shuu agreed to explain and then immediately denied killing Hiyoko. Shuu continued on, explaining Yuuya didn't kill her either, but that didn't mean that they hadn't been involved in the crime at all. This obviously confused Sakuya, but Shuu was already done with the conversation.
Could you be quiet for a minute, Mr. Shirogane? You bore me. You filthy, low-born mongrel. Oh shit!
Sakuya having quote-unquote impure blood must be what was on that piece of paper in his medical folder, and that explained why Yuuya was willing to knock Ryouta out to prevent him from finding out the truth. That also must have been what Yuuya wanted to tell Sakuya after the events of his true ending. Before I could get too excited about all these implications, Shuu decided that Sakuya had fulfilled his purpose and stabbed him. Sakuya laid there bleeding out until he realized that he wasn't actually bleeding out at all because Yuuya had taken Shu's scalpel instead. Apparently, they had made a deal to work together as long as Shuu didn't tell anyone the truth about Sakuya. But since Shuu never promised not to tell Sakuya himself, or, not to kill him, he decided that was fair game. Ryouta showed up soon after, and realizing what happened, accused Shuu of being behind everything. But Shuu once again denied it, and I unfortunately had to agree with him. The truth was clearly something far worse. The scarecrow suddenly appeared, but Shuu just calmly greeted it, calling it Labor 9, because apparently it was his creation. He challenged Ryouta to meet him deep beneath the surface once he had discovered the truth, and then left. Ryouta tried to rush after him, but Yuuya stopped him, asking if he'd be willing to hear his confession first. Yuuya explained that Hiyoko did die in the infirmary yesterday, but he and Shuu hadn't killed her. A third person did. Ryouta demanded to know who, but Yuuya wouldn't tell him, just simply saying that he would figure it out eventually. Yuuya also apologized and confessed that he and the doctor were the ones who dismembered Hiyoko's body.
Damn, we were literally trying to romance you, Yuuya. You could have just rejected us. This is crazy.
Shuu had wanted her body cut up and distributed the way it was, so it would give the humans plenty of time to gather and fulfill the Hawk Party's ultimate goal. Even though Yuuya had said he would be fine, he was clearly dying, so he asked Ryouta to leave the room so he and Sakuya could talk in private. Then Yuuya had a flashback. He remembered learning how he had a new father and would have a life of luxury, but he had to abandon his brother, who was still an egg. Yuuya's mother was understandably depressed about having to kill her child, so Yuuya offered to take the egg and do it for her. However, Yuuya knew that his new father had killed his old father father to be with his mother. So to get his revenge, he waited until his mother laid an egg with his new father and then switched it out with the original egg that he had kept safe and hidden. But because no one else knew the truth, his new father raised Sakuya like his own son, and his brother got to enjoy a life of privilege, all while depriving his new father of a true heir. Yuuya and Sakuya are by far the most interesting characters in this game to me. Their dynamic and relationship is just fascinating. Sakuya was shocked by this revelation and angry at Yuuya, believing he had the authority to do something like that in the first place, but Yuuya had no regrets for the act itself, only that he didn't tell Sakuya the truth sooner. Sakuya, his worldview now entirely shattered, demanded to know who he was outside of being the Labelle heir, but Yuuya simply told him to leave this place and to find out for himself. Yuuya was fading fast, much to Sakuya's dismay. While Yuuya could have survived a typical scalpel wound, this scalpel had been covered in the same nerve toxin that killed the headmaster. With that, all Yuuya had left in him was a few parting words.
You are yourself. Never let anyone tie you down. Later, buddy. Oh, Yuuya. Damn. Fuck.
I swear all Yuuya knows how to do is die in increasingly tragic ways. Back in the maintenance office, Ryouta and Leone tried to figure out what Shuu meant by meeting deep beneath the surface. The main building didn't have a basement, and as they learned earlier, the medical center basement was blocked off by concrete. However, Leone speculated that there might be another entrance. Ryouta remembered that he hadn't yet looked at the encyclopedias he found earlier and set off to the library to try to speak with Nageki again. But Sakuya, still in shock over what happened to Yuuya, decided to stay behind. At the library, Nageki appeared to be speaking to the ghost of Hiyoko, but she faded right before Ryouta arrived. Ryouta asked Nageki if he was really dead, which he confirmed, but he still couldn't remember the full details of his death. Ryouta explained the situation with the encyclopedias, and Nageki suggested he look at one of the copies of Volume 9. When Ryouta did, he realized it wasn't a book at all, but instead a box of files. These files were on Operation Hatoful, a program to use carrier birds as biological weapons against humans. 5 years ago, Nageki was found to be one of these carrier birds, and Shuu was able to isolate a new strain of the virus lethal to humans, which he named the Charon virus. This seemed to trigger a memory in Nageki of humans he met getting very sick, eventually culminating in him setting himself and the medical center ablaze. Nageki then had a flashback. He grew up in an orphanage with other birds ever since he could remember. His orphanage was specifically for war orphans, but Nageki never cared about or resented humans. But one day, humans forcefully entered the orphanage and killed all of the birds one by one, except for Nageki, who was able to hide. The next thing he remembered was another bird entering and all of the humans being dead. Nageki and his remaining sibling lived together in an apartment, but Nageki was too sick to go to school or get a job, leading to him feeling guilty. One day, Nageki was invited to attend and receive treatment at St. Pigeonations, and while he didn't want to leave his brother, he also didn't want to drag him down, so he decided to enroll. Nageki was surprisingly happy at St. Pigeonations. Shuu told him that if he underwent extensive treatment, he could be as healthy as any other bird by the time school started back. Nageki agreed, and he was subjected to various treatments and experiments. One day, the researchers started bringing him humans, which would die shortly after coming into contact with him. Despite all of the harm that humans had done to him and his family, Nageki felt guilty watching them die because of him. He eventually decided to end it all in order to disappear without a trace. But obviously that didn't exactly work out, as his spirit was still there, so presumably some of his body was too. Nageki could also feel that his brother was close by.
Oh my god, wait. No way in hell the teacher is your brother.
In the box alongside the files, there was also a map of the medical center. It showed that there were stairs to the medical center basement in the main school building's chemistry preparation room. With that, Ryouta headed out, with Nageki giving him one last cryptic message.
I think you will be seeing me again, and Mr. Saka as well. Okay. I don't really want to see you guys, because you guys are both dead, and that's not a good sign for me.
Ryouta regrouped with Sakuya and Leone in the maintenance room, as well as Kazuaki, who was there for some reason. Since they only had 3 hours left before humans killed them all, they decided to split up, with Leone in charge of gathering up the other students so they'd be ready to escape, and Ryouta and Kazuaki heading to the basement to confront Shuu. Sakuya was still very out of it, so he decided to stay behind and catch up with them later, which, you know, fair enough, Sakuya's had a bad fucking day. But before they could leave, Anghel appeared and forced himself into the party without giving Ryouta or Kazuaki the chance to reject him. But Anghel immediately proved his worth by finding the entrance to the basement behind a mirror. And with that, the trio descended down a long, dark staircase. Right when they entered the lab, the Scarecrow appeared, and this time they couldn't run away. If they wanted to confront Shuu, they'd have to defeat this thing first. Anghel suggested purifying it with holy water, which once again was surprisingly helpful. It inspired Kazuaki to douse it in water from a fire hose, allowing Ryouta to electrocute it with a stun gun. The Scarecrow finally collapsed, and there was nothing left to do but find Shuu. Back in the maintenance room, Sakuya wallowed in his frustration at himself for not going with them. As he reflected over what Yuuya told him and how he's lived his life until now, he desperately wished his brother was here so he could ask for advice. It was a truly emotional scene until... How the fuck are you in this game, my guy? But Okosan was actually here for a very sweet reason. He wanted to make sure that he, Ryouta, and Sakuya could all escape together. Upon noticing that Sakuya was crying, Okosan used Healing Touch, which only pissed Sakuya off. But then he graced Sakuya with what would become my favorite scene in the entire game.
Okosan heard that Yuuya has gone somewhere far, far away. We will never see him again. Do not worry, if we cannot meet him, we need only chase after him. Do you have any idea what you're saying? Death is not a good place to chase someone to. No doubt the older breeds have no concept of death. Chase Yuuya into the grave? What kind of fool would? Okosan knows! The earth is a ball, so if we run far enough, we'll find him! What foolishness. Speaking with mongrels makes my head hurt. Except I'm a mongrel too. Poor mongrels who do not even notice their own error, that is. Okosan is not a mongrel! Sakuya and Yuuya and Okosan all have their own wonderful names. Names more important than any breed. Is that your argument? That isn't even... You are yourself. Never let anyone tie you down. I am myself. It is time to go. Okosan and friend are late. Oh, they're playing Yuuya's theme. We will never see him again, no matter how far we run. But if he were here now, what would he do? What would he want me to do? At any rate, moving around here won't get us anywhere. I will chase after him. I will never find him. But I will find myself. Oh, fuck, I love these guys. Now thoroughly motivated, they raced off to find the others. Back in the basement, Anghel somehow knew how to guide the trio to Shuu. They entered a lab where they found notes on all of the students that Shuu had invited to the school, including Anghel and Ryouta. Angel's notes had a very thorough description of his condition, but Ryota's merely had a bunch of numbers. Before they could investigate further, Anghel determined the doctor's location and ran off. Kazuaki held Ryouta back to ask him why he lied about going straight home yesterday, but Ryouta was confused and didn't have an answer for him. Ryouta wondered why Kazuaki would accuse him of lying when he hadn't, but with no time left to lose, they hurried to catch up to Anghel. Anghel had led them to a dilapidated lab, the place where the fire started 5 years ago. Shuu was in fact there and scolded Ryouta for being late. Ryouta accused Shuu of killing the headmaster, which was true, but he also accused him of killing Hiyoko, which Shuu once again denied. Shuu decided that since Ryouta had all the pieces but still didn't know the truth, he'd have to walk him through it. Iron bars fell from the ceiling, separating Kazuaki and Anghel from Ryouta, who had no choice but to continue his conversation with Shuu. Shuu confirmed that he was a researcher on Operation Hatoful and developed the Charon virus to wipe out humanity. However, despite the virus's strength, it couldn't last very long outside of a host body, so they would have to send live carriers into human society to infect them. But there was a problem with that. Although the Charon virus was harmless to birds, it also didn't survive well in them, with the exception of Nageki, who had a rare genetic condition that caused a compromised immune system. Shuu and the researchers had assumed that Nageki hated humans, and because of that, they didn't expect the experiments to have such an impact on his mental health. Though Nageki's death led to the project permanently being put on hold, Shuu preserved his remains and waited for another carrier to arrive. It sounds like this was a very labor-intensive project. Kazuaki? Sir? What the fuck? Now is not the time. But Shuu eventually came up with a better plan. Instead of waiting for a carrier to arrive, he'd create one himself. All he had to do was weaken someone's immune system, slowly, over the course of a year. You're an exemplary student, Mr. Kuwara. I give you full marks. With this, Ryouta finally remembered what he had forgotten. He had gone to the infirmary yesterday, and Hiyoko had gone to see him. But shortly after she arrived, she collapsed, unable to breathe. In a daze, due to the recently implanted Charon virus in his body, Ryouta left her to die on the floor, believing he'd see her tomorrow. Shuu was thrilled at his experiment's success, but Ryouta couldn't believe what had happened. Not only had he unwillingly killed Hiyoko, but he was also fated to kill every human he ever came in contact with. And to make things even worse, Shuu went on to explain the truth behind the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow, or Labor 9, was a labor model new human originally designed by the Dove Party. These creatures, comprised of human heads and artificial bodies, were designed to do laborious tasks that birds were unable to. The project never officially entered development due to ethical concerns, but Shuu continued the research. He designed Labor 9 to be his sidekick, keeping Ryouta on track during his investigation. And of course, it wasn't just any human brain inside of Labor 9, it was Hiyoko's. Somehow her brain had still been active, with her personality at least still partially intact, but once Ryouta electrocuted her, he destroyed any chance of reviving her. Ryouta began to spiral, but Shuu told him he still had one more thing he had to remember, something he and Hiyoko had told him long ago. Shuu held out his wing, and with nothing left to lose, Ryouta allowed the doctor to lead him away, despite Anghel and Kazuaki's protests. Having no reason to keep them around anymore, Shuu locked the door behind them and filled the room with poison gas. Ryouta slowly began to remember what happened between him, Hiyoko, and Shuu. Hiyoko's parents had been mediators sent in to break up the dispute at Nageki's orphanage, but they were shot at by the humans, who took their arrival as a sign to start massacring the birds. Ryouta and Hiyoko couldn't do anything but watch from outside. They were then approached by a strange bird who offered to grant them a wish. Ryouta wished that there would be no more fighting between birds and humans, and Hiyoko agreed, stating she would do anything to make that happen. The stranger, obviously Shuu, told him that it wasn't possible now, but he promised to make it happen eventually. Ryouta woke up and relayed his memories to Shuu, who confirmed that that was all true. And so I'm carrying out your wish, just as you had stated it. Oh, you suck so bad, you suck so bad. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. In Shu's twisted mind, he decided that in order to end fighting between humans and birds for good, one race had to be destroyed, which is obviously not what those two literal children meant. Shuu continued on, explaining that he did not offer to grant Ryota's wish on a whim, but instead to fulfill a promise he himself had made. After all that, Shuu had the fucking nerve to ask Ryouta to thank him for everything he had done for him. Ryouta, in a state of utter shock and despair, wanted to disappear forever, but Shuu reassured him that he would forget soon enough anyways, and with that, Ryouta drifted to sleep. Kazuaki and Anghel were still slowly dying from the poison gas, but thankfully Okosan and Sakuya arrived and saved them. Kazuaki brought them up to speed and they hurried to rescue Ryouta. Kuwara, are you still alive? he's red. Despite everything, I'm glad this game can still make me laugh. Anyways, Sakuya demanded to know what was going on, and Shuu explained that it was almost 10, and thus time for Ryouta to begin the end of the human race. Okosan bravely stepped up to try to fight Ryouta. Cool! Shuu had brainwashed him, allowing him to surpass his normal physical limits, and if Okosan couldn't defeat him, then there was little hope for anyone else. Guys, I fear we're kind of fucked. Guys, Shot, I fear we're cooked. Like Yuuya, But thankfully, Anghel was a bird unlike any other. He drew Ryouta in with his brainwashing powers and everyone else along with them. Under Anghel's reality, they could have a true fair fight in the form of an RPG boss battle. Anghel attacked first, encouraging Ryouta to break Shu's spell. Okosan followed, cooing at him to come to his senses. Kazuaki pleaded for Ryouta to come back to them. Sakuya begged him to choose a different path, and then someone else joined the fight. No, it's Hyoko! With some final words from Hyoko's spirit, Ryouta was defeated and thus able to regain his sense of self. Sakuya asked if he genuinely wanted this, and he said no, but when the others tried to attack Shuu, Ryouta stopped them. He asked why Shuu went so far to grant his wish, and, albeit reluctantly, Shuu agreed to tell him. Shuu, whose real name was Issa, worked as a researcher with Ryuji Kawara, Ryota's father. Ryuji was an incredible researcher, whom Shuu greatly admired. Despite Shu's, everything, Ryuji was kind to him, and went out of his way to befriend him. Shuu had even agreed to go on a research trip with him one day, but before they ever could, Ryuji fell ill. While he was dying, Ryuji told Shuu that his one regret was not spending enough time with his son, and he asked Shuu to do something for Ryouta should they ever meet. And with that final wish, he died. Oh my god! Old man bird yowie. But on a more serious note, now that Ryuji was gone, Shuu could never surpass him, and instead could only connect with him via his son, Ryouta. Ryouta, who barely remembered his father, still didn't really understand. But Shuu was actually more confused about why Ryouta was rejecting the wish Shuu worked so hard to grant, so he tried to clarify. A world without strife, where no one will have a loved one stolen from them. That is the world I wish for. I never asked for a world where the human race is killed. A pity that you did not say so 8 years ago. Oh my god. You fucking asshole. Okay, yeah. Ryouta told Shuu that his wish was over and his father was gone, so he should stop chasing after him. This seemed to actually get to Shuu a little, and he agreed to end this and accept defeat. But they weren't out of the woods yet, as they only had 10 minutes before the entire school would be killed by humans. Luckily, Leone arrived just in time with all of the students from the gym, and Shuu offered to lead everyone to the exit. All of the other students were able to escape, with only our main birds remaining inside. Saki and Ryouta decided that they wanted to go collect Hyoko's body. But before heading out, Sakuya promised Shuu that he would face judgment once they were outside. However, someone already beat him to the punch. A gunshot echoes through the room. The doctor collapses. Madness! There should still be some time before the humans— Mr. Nageki? A pistol's in his hand. What? He wobbles over to the doctor with the same unsteady, careless gait as always. And shit! At this, the other birds demanded Kazuaki stop so Shuu could have a fair trial, but Kazuaki had one simple question to ask him. Where is Nageki? Oh yeah, okay, he is the brother. I was right, I'm a genius. Yes, Kazuaki was in fact Nageki's brother, and now we got to see his side of the story. His real name was Hitori, and he used to have a very different coat of feathers. Hitori was very close with Nageki, constantly trying to cheer him up and remind him that he wasn't a burden. He worked at the local school, and every Friday, all of the birds at the orphanage would have dinner together. One of these Fridays, Hitori was coming home from work when he found the orphanage surrounded by security. Everyone was screaming at him to stay back, but he couldn't. He had to check on his family. Unfortunately, he found everyone covered in blood, dead, except for Nageki. They moved out to their own apartment, but Nageki's illness started to get worse. Nageki refused treatment and kept pushing himself to try to help Hitori. Hitori, in response, told Nageki that he had to say how he really felt and was no longer allowed to lie and say he was fine. He took Nageki to several doctors, but none of them could help him. But one day, Nageki got an invitation to attend St. Pigeonations. And although he was reluctant, Hitori encouraged him to go in the hopes that the doctors would be able to cure him. Hitori was lonely and worried about Nageki, but he also knew that this was the best chance of finding a cure. Nageki wrote a lot, but Dr. Issa said Hitori wasn't allowed to visit. During the summer, Nageki's letters became more worrying, and Hitori knew something was wrong when Nageki wrote to him telling him that he was fine, something he hadn't said in 3 years. The doctor still wouldn't tell him anything, so Hitori decided to sneak into the medical center. However, right as he arrived, he saw researchers panicking about a fire, but Hitori continued to charge in looking for Nageki. Hitori eventually found him, but it was too late. Nageki apologized and locked himself in with the fire. Despite Hitori's pleas, there was nothing he could say to convince Nageki to come back with him. Nageki had just 2 requests of Hitori. The first being to make sure his body was destroyed, and the second, the memory cut out before we could find out. Back in the present, Kazuaki demanded that Shuu tell him where Nageki was. Shuu eventually explained that after the fire, there were some pieces of Nageki's body left over. He had preserved them until today, when he transferred them to Ryota's body. Kazuaki shot Shuu again, which he totally deserved, before once again asking, where was Nageki? Shuu clarified that he had given Ryouta Nageki's liver, which contained the Charon virus. Kazuaki calmly walked over to Ryouta, but began speaking to Nageki. Both Ryouta and Sakuya tried to get him to calm down so they could deal with the humans who were literally about to murder them, but Kazuaki simply turned his gun on Sakuya and asked Ryouta to come with him to a quieter room.
room. Kazuaki started to plan how he would cut into Ryouta, despite his protests.
Where are you? Tell me. What part of Kuwara do I need to cut open to find you? Nageki, 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 Nageki.
But right before he could make the first slice, Nageki's voice came from inside Ryouta, asking if he could borrow his body for a bit. Nageki asked if Kazuaki could hear him, and Kazuaki responded that he talked with him every night. But that version of Nageki told him to find him and get revenge on the doctor. The real Nageki refuted this and asked if he remembered the second thing Nageki had asked him to do before he died. Kazuaki was still dead set that Nageki had told him to get revenge. I died because of you. You abandoned me here. I never wanted to come here. It was you who killed me. You killed me. You killed me. You killed me. In reality, that Nageki was nothing more than a shadow in Kazuaki's mind, comprised of his own regret and self-hatred. The shadow had a firm grip on him, convincing him that he needed to find Nageki and live forever with his guilt. Ryouta and the real Nageki tried to convince him that revenge was wrong, but Kazuaki was certain that he was the cause of Nageki's pain and only revenge could fix it. Ryouta asked why Kazuaki was doing this to himself and reminded him that Nageki loved spending time with him, but his shadow tried to pull Kazuaki back.
Look at me, Hattori. You're only my voice, Hattori. I will tear your heart to pieces, and when it heals, I will tear it again, and again, and again. That is your punishment. It will be wonderful to live with me again. Wonderful.
Finally, Nageki himself was able to speak through Ryouta and tell Kazuaki to stop punishing himself. Then, he helped Kazuaki remember that his first wish wasn't to be saved, but for his body to be destroyed so that no trace of the Charon virus would remain. Kazuaki kept going, insisting that Nageki's second wish had been to get revenge on Shuu, but that wasn't correct.
Yes, my second wish was, live, Hattori, live and be happy.
Kazuaki protested. He would never be able to be happy without Nageki, but Nageki disagreed. He had thought his spirit was still around because his remains were, but in reality, he was too worried that Kazuaki wouldn't be able to go on alone. In his final moments, Nageki told Kazuaki to move on and that they would one day meet again. With that, Kazuaki and Ryouta rejoined the others, who were surprised to see Ryouta unhurt. But they were out of time and needed to leave now to escape the human's wrath. Well, except for Ryouta.
I'm staying here with Hiyoko.
There was no way to remove the virus with current medical technology, so Ryouta would wait here with Hiyoko's damaged brain until there was a way to help them both. Kazuaki and Shuu seemed to understand, but Sakuya hated the thought of leaving him here.
Listen, Kuwara, Labelle. No, I never go back on my word. No matter how long it takes, I will come back for you. I swear. So, promise me, please. Promise me that you'll leave this place with me, alive. Right. I promise. I'll be waiting for you.
Now, only Ryouta and Hiyoko were left, but at least they were together with all the time in the world. They had a lot of catching up to do. The credits rolled, but since we achieved perfection, we got a bonus epilogue to see how everyone was doing. Yuuya was alive, much to Sakuya's frustration, thanks to Leone, who gave him an antidote.
Give it back! Give me back the time and mental energy I spent mourning you! You mourned me? I'm flattered.
Gah! But Yuuya and Leone couldn't stay long as they had to set off on a new mission. Anghel and Okosan seemed to have become friends, I think. As for the adults,
hello, Shirogane.
Why is this man being allowed to walk the streets? Why are we letting this man free? Go to jail. Sakuya shared my sentiments and questioned why Kazuaki was pushing Shuu's wheelchair. Apparently, since Kazuaki was the one who caused the injuries, taking care of Shuu was his way of apologizing. Again, me and Sakuya shared the same sentiment of what the actual fuck, but Sakuya was there for a reason. Their latest experiment had been a success.
Wake up, Kuwara! Tasaka, I told you I wouldn't go back on my word.
With that, I had completed 100% of Hatoful Boyfriend, and wow, what a fucking roller coaster. This experience was hilarious, heartfelt, horrible at times, but above all else, it was Hatoful Boyfriend, a truly one-of-a-kind game. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you enjoyed, then please consider subscribing. Not only does it make my day, but you'll also be notified when I upload more videos like this. Also, if you have any ideas for games that I should play in the future, then please let me know down below. With that, thank you again for watching, have a great rest of your day, please take care of yourself, drink some water, and try not to get murdered by birds, and I'll see you next time. Bye everyone!